We'll go ahead and start the regularly scheduled meeting for January 28th. And Councilor Downing will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for the opportunity we have to come together as a council and to make wise decisions for our community. We pray that you will bless us with to know the right things to do for our community. We say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, Becky, if we could please have a roll call.
Mayor Langrel.
Present.
Councillor Button. Councillor Coles.
Present.
Councillor Dora.
Present.
Councillor Downing.
Present.
Councillor Johnson. Present. Councillor Mosier. Present. The record reflect all are present with the exception of Councillor Button.
Thank you. Okay, we have a consent agenda for an approval of a liquor license for the Tiedemann Consulting for the golf course, and also a liquor license for, I'm guessing, new owners of the Moulin Garden.
I move we approve the consent.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved by Councillor Coles, and seconded by Councillor Downing to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda this evening is the citizens' participation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to bring something forward to the council that is not on the agenda, please do so.
Hi, my name is Brian Barrow, City Councilor. It's good to speak with you. Basically, what I would like to bring to your attention is creating either an ordinance or something even perhaps simpler than that, whereby we create a necessity for signage in our city parks and publicly accessible areas such as the Leo Adler Path. Whenever there's been herbicide or pesticide spraying that has taken place in these areas, there will be signage so that the public is aware that something has been sprayed there that could potentially be harmful to children, pets, or toxin-sensitive adults. And so simply by creating, like I said, either an ordinance or something of that nature. I'm not alone in my desire to see this. I've got about what amounts to approximately 0.5% of the entire population of Baker City right here who agrees with me. So, and I'd like to hand this over to whoever might like to have this. That would be great. Thank you. So that's my proposal, and it's pretty straightforward. It's really not a matter of why shouldn't we do this? It's more of a matter of why haven't we been doing this for the past 20 or 30 years? It's just common sense. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's just a simple health and public safety issue. So I'd like to see that accomplished if at all possible.
Okay, Councillor Dora.
Yes, Mr. Barrow. I've been in places where they sprayed, and then they have a little kind of like just a little wire frame with paper sign stuck right on it. They just stick it in the ground. Would that meet your needs? I mean, it's kind of a temporary thing.
Yeah, it's pretty much a temporary thing for probably approximately 2 weeks. Put a sign out saying that this area has been sprayed with such and such chemical on whatever date the application has occurred, and just to give the public the choice of do they want to enter that area, knowing that this could adversely affect somebody's health or their pets or their kids. It's just giving them that option and that awareness. And like I say, it's a pretty straightforward thing. Many other cities, towns, and countries do this on a routine basis. So it's, it happens in literally thousands of places around the world. And like I say, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and be a pretty easy thing to accomplish. Very little cost involved at all. Just like you were mentioning, a few signs. It's posted every, however, 15, 20 feet along all the park areas that, if they have a reason to be sprayed with that chemical.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Dora. Councilor Mosier.
I've spoken with Mr. Barrow on a couple of occasions about this subject, and I encouraged him to come and give his suggestion to the council tonight. So
Good one.
And I do support it. I think that it's not expensive, not difficult, and I know that even the sports complex posts after they've sprayed for pests, they just use paper signs inside of a plastic slip cover, and they just attach it with ties to the fence there, and it wouldn't be a difficult thing for us to do. And I know that that herbicides, pesticides do adversely affect animals and some sensitive people, and so I also applaud you for being willing to put forth the effort and to come up with a signature sheet and get community support for it. And thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you,
And,
Councilor Mosier.
I have known people who have had adverse health effects and become sickened by some of these chemicals, not simply not knowing they were in the area.
My daughter, when she was in high school, she was participating in a track meet at the high school, and they had just sprayed the grass the day before, and the combination of the chemical and the heavy activity that she was in, she went into distress, and they took her to the hospital, and they told us if she'd gotten there 5 minutes later, she wouldn't have made it. But up until that time, we had no idea she was allergic to this stuff. So I think it should be a requirement that the companies that are spraying this stuff put out some temporary signs to cover it for people that are having problems. Thank you. Councilor Downing.
Mike, do we hire somebody to come and do that kind of stuff, or is that something we do?
Yes, we contract.
Okay.
But what would be the simplest way for the city to handle this?
It sounds simple, just having a contractor post the police spray.
Okay. All righty. We'll put that in their RFP or whatever it is. Okay. Well, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
All righty, well, thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would like to come forward to the council about anything that's not on the agenda this evening? Okay, we'll move on. Okay, next item on the agenda, we are going to move Mr. Smith right up to item 5.5. Going to give us an update.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Greg Smith, Baker County Economic Development. If it'd be all right, I'd like to just take a moment and give you an update on the activities that we've been undertaking here for the last couple of months. And I have to share with you, I look there and I see Baker County Economic Development, and what that really ought to say is Baker County, Baker City, Haines, Huntington, Halfway, et cetera, economic development, because we're all partners in this together. Just so everyone knows, we have a 5-member economic development committee that I answer to, and Councilor Dora and Mike are on that committee, and we're kind of locked at the hip in trying to move economic development forward. So really quick on this show, about 6 months ago, the committee had the concept of how do we start reaching out to businesses who we would like to attract to our county, who would be a good fit. And so we had some conversations and we did a little bit of research. And one of the shows we found was a show called the Outdoor Retailers Winter Market Expo. And I want you to envision what goes on here. It's in Salt Lake City. There's over 22,000 participants in this trade show. And if you've ever been to the Portland Expo Center, envision that times 10. That's how big this show is. And the folks who are there are manufacturers, they're retailers, there's economic development folks, there's service sector, there's folks from everywhere who are trying to promote outdoor activities. And so what we want to do is show you a little bit about what we did and just report back to you. So Phil, let's click on the first slide. To give you an idea of the type of companies that are there, you have Adidas there, you have Under Armour, you have Nike, these huge companies. You also have small little mom and pop companies. This is a fella who has an invention where he has a fishing pole with a marshmallow turner on the end. And you can go like this with it, and it turns it over. And he's manufacturing it. So I want you to understand the type of companies that are there. What we ended up doing before we went to the show is we identified who are those smaller companies that employ one person to about 20 who might be a good fit for Baker City, for Baker County, and we went and sent them a personalized letter. So we did our research before the show, and we sent out about 250 of these personalized letters. Then and that was about a month before the show, letting them know Baker County was going to be there. Then about a week before the show, we sent another letter, letting them know we're coming to your booth and we want to personally meet you. Then we went to the show and we started visiting with these folks. And what we ended up coming away with were 10 solid business leads. 10. And I'm going to share a couple of those with you this evening. Click through here. Click to the next one. One more. Okay, this is our first one. This is a lady out of Missoula, Montana. But it's really interesting. Her background is she was in Seattle. She's been through Bend. She knows Baker City very, very well. And she's trying to bring forward her designer jewelry. Now, that's not manufacturing. Okay? I get that. But it's a small little mom and pop company that might be interested in coming here. Now, I'm not very good, but I'm lucky. And when we got to the show, all of a sudden it clicked with us what our message needs to be when we start visiting with these folks. And that is that Baker County has an environment that supports small business. And so when we started talking to these entrepreneurs, the very first question I'd ask them is what are you doing for working capital? What are you doing for equipment needs? What are you doing to grow your company? And every one of these small business owners had the same answer. Well, we're not getting any support. I said, well, what if you came to Baker County and we were able to help you with some financing? And we were able to help you with some technical assistance. Maybe we were able to help you find a building. The next group of entrepreneurs I'm about to show you, every one of them said, I'd be most interested in learning more. And what I ended up doing through all these is I gave them a 1-star if they were kind of interested, to a 5-star. And I'm going to show you a couple of the 5 stars that we're going to be following up on. So the next one. This is a lady who is out of Lapine, Oregon, and I should have brought their product with me. She makes a portable dog food, okay? And she makes it, manufactures it in Lapine. Her interest in Baker is that she comes hiking here, okay? She brings her dog here. And the one story she shared with me, she said, every time I go hiking, I used to have to bring 50 pounds of dog food with me. She said, I didn't want to bring 50 pounds of dog food, so I went and created this little package. And I said, well, how are you growing your business? And I got to keep some things confidential because you never know where this goes. But she said, working capital and access to capital is a major issue. And I said, well, do you know in Baker City and Baker County, we have access to loan programs. What if we could help you grow your business? She says, I'd be interested in talking to you. This is an interesting young man. He's in Maine. But I want you to look at his age. He's about 26, 27 years old. He makes these custom-made wallets. He has rolls and rolls and rolls of sails from like a sailboat, old sails. And what he's trying to do is turn them into these lightweight wallets. Well, we got to talking with him. Once again, working capital is a major issue for him. Keep in mind, he's young, he's mobile. Okay? He's not tied down with a mortgage. He's not tied down with all that. He could locate his business anywhere. When I started talking to him, he said, my major issue is I'm trying to figure out a company that could help with sewing the wallets. Well, one of the companies that Baker County Economic Development is working with is a sewing manufacturer. I'm trying to recruit that company to the county. And so I started thinking, well, what if we brought that company and this company together? Is there a synergy? When I started talking to him, he said, I'd love to come out here. He's from Maine, but when we started talking about what the Pacific Northwest offers, he was all over it. He said, please send me more information. We want to talk. He said, I borrowed $10,000. I paid it off in 18 months, but in order for me to grow, I need more capital. And so I said, we might be able to talk to you. He said, let's stay in touch. Next one. Go back one. This is an interesting gentleman. He was most interested as well in business plan development and working capital once again. He makes customized coasters. And then these coasters come from different types of wood sources that have fallen in the forest. When I talked to him about the concept of using juniper, which I don't know what most of you think, but it's a weed, he was all over that. And he said, man, if I could figure out how to add juniper into our mix, I'd be most interested. And we talked about capital. He was interested in it. He's one of those that said he'd be interested in actually coming and visiting us here. This is Locked in Stock. This is a gentleman that makes portable camp stoves, cuts them out of metal. His issue was he wanted to figure out, that's a great picture of me. He wants to figure out how to get into Cabela's. Well, over the course of our economic development work, I've actually developed a relationship with some of the purchasing folks at Cabela's. I have that relationship. I said, what if we could figure out how to help you get into Cabela's? I said, well, that'd be great, but I need working capital. Another common theme, I said, what if we could talk to you and help you figure that out? He said, most interested. By the way, he was a 4-star. On 5 stars, he was a 4-star. Next one. This is the last one I'll show you, just in the interest of time. This is Mountain Boys Sled Works. This gentleman is out of Colorado. He takes art and function and puts it together. If you can envision a sled built 150 years ago that actually works, that's what this gentleman does. He comes from a small community of under 500 people, and he was looking to grow his business, and he's looking for a community to support him, and he was most interested. He was one of those that said, I'd love to come visit. So I wanted to share, this is the good one. This is the really good one. This is a company called Recover Inc. I gotta read this to you. Some of you might recognize this name. Gotta look it up. Gotta get the glasses on here. Any of you know the last name of Kirkpatrick? Patrick's? Well, this is a grandson of, I don't have the father's name here, but his father and grandfather were the original owners of the Chevy dealership. This young man is making these custom-made wood-backed cell phone covers. He's doing it in Portland. I looked at him and I said, what are you doing this in Portland for? You need to be in Baker City. So I didn't know I could come do that. I said, yeah, you can. We want you here. He said, well, I come out there and visit every summer. I said, well, you need to come out and sit down and visit with us. He's very entrepreneurial. I don't know this to be sure, but he just appears to be one of those young MBA type guys that's looking to do the next project. And I said, well, you need to return to Baker City, and we'll support you, and we'll help you get your business going. What you don't see in that picture is there was off to the right of the gentleman in the plaid were a bunch of these covers that were designed primarily for female consumers. And behind us, where this picture's being taken, no exaggeration, there were probably 20 females lined up to look at his product. It was very, very popular. Now, what I want to share with you about this show, just very quickly, is this is a show that no matter who's doing economic development in the future, we need to have a representative there. Okay? It is a large, large outdoor recreation show. And many of the folks that we were talking to knew right where Baker City was. They knew where Baker County was. They knew Hell's Canyon. They knew Anthony Lakes. And the people at the show are mobile, and they have capital. And we need to make sure we're reaching out to these folks. As a matter of fact, Mike and Councilor Dora have instructed me to be working with Base Camp Baker to make sure that they have representation as well next year at the show. Now, what did this cost you? It cost you $550. Okay, that's a lot of money. But I'll tell you what, it was a lot of outreach and a lot of opportunity to showcase what we have in this county, what we have in the city, and to touch some businesses that I think we're going to get some good leads from. Well, we'll be starting, the show just ended on Sunday. What we're doing now is we're following up with 250 more letters to the businesses we all visited and thanking them for their time. And we're going to, with these hotter businesses, we're going to be personally contacting them. So we wanted you to know that's part of the economic development activity we're undertaking. Any questions on that?
Sounds great.
Perfect. I know I don't want to take a lot of time. Can I just share one or two more things, Mayor? Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. I want to share with you our webpage. Can you go to the home section on that first? One of the things I shared with you the last time we met is we're trying to make sure everything is branded. And so we have, from the simplest, from branded stationery to branded business cards to door hangers to a packet. And I think I shared this with you last time we were here. We now have a branded website that showcases the county. One of the things we just recently had to do is to update it even further, and now this is mobile, and so people can look at this website from their phone. Previously, we weren't able to do that, but now you can. One other thing we've done to update this is we're trying to list available properties that are available for folks who want to come to the city, come to the county and work on, or come here and work and to buy space. And so what we've done is we've put together a listing of available properties. So we just click on one of them. So if you're interested in a property, you can click on it, and it'll have this information for you. Now, I want to point out, I'll go all the way down. So we're trying to showcase the properties. I'm trying to reach out to folks outside of the county and let them know that we're open for business, that we have space available for business. I would have you notice, though, that I'm putting a broker contact there. We don't want to be in the business of selling someone else's real estate, but we do want to be in the business of trying to promote it, and so we're listing that information. So we'd encourage everyone, if you get a chance, to go to www.bakercountyeconomicdevelopment.com, and you can learn a little more about it. So, any questions on that? Okay. Just last couple updates, Mayor and council members. Last time I was here, I shared with you that I was working really, really hard trying to bring a national retailer to our community, and I struck out. I just purely struck out. We could not find the land that they needed. It was Shopco. Shopco was looking at coming here. I probably spent 20 meetings with them. In the end, though, they had such specific criteria on the type of real estate they needed, I just couldn't meet it. And if I would have brought forward their request, you guys would have all fired me, because their request was for me to see if you'd be willing to sell them the city park. And I wasn't sure that was something that Mayor you would have supported. So I had to tell them, no, that's probably not an option. We looked at everything. They came out and visited with us. We got in the car, we drove around, we turned over every stone, but in the end, what they needed, we just didn't have it. And so we were hoping to put it in some of our retail spaces, open spaces on Campbell, but we couldn't because there are deed restrictions. One of the things Shopco was going to have was a pharmacist, and there were deed restrictions on having additional pharmacies on that property. We looked at some property behind the fairgrounds. That wasn't going to work because they wanted to be on Campbell. And because of the size requirements of what they needed versus what was available, we just couldn't do it. But we tried. We really tried. With that said, though, we're now working with another group of entrepreneurs that are looking to bring a national branded franchise restaurant to the community, and we're working closely with them. So I wanted to let you know that activity is going on. Wanted to let you know that I have had contact with Ashgrove Cement, and without getting into too much detail, I can share with you that their future is positive at this point in time. Also want to let you know that we have a major arts manufacturer in our community that is doing very well and is actually obtaining additional space to accommodate some of their growth. So we're working on that. We do have some other challenges. I won't go into too much detail on that, but one of the common themes we're seeing among our business owners is access to capital. Trying to help them get the capital they need to either grow their business or to work through issues that they're dealing with. And if I had to categorize how much time I'm spending on each issue, I'd probably say 40% because I'm working on financing and capital issues. So that's where we are. I want you to know, Mayor, council members, how much I appreciate your city manager. We're locked at the hip. We work pretty darn well together. We're working close together. And I want you to know I appreciate being able to work with the city. So that's my update, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay. Move on to item number 6 now, marijuana dispensary discussion. And we'll turn this over to Chief Loney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, tonight we're going to begin a discussion on House Bill 3460, which I think most of you are aware of. It was passed through legislation, the legislature last year, and signed by the governor, which is going to, they're still in the process of putting the rules and regulations together, which are going to allow for licensed dispensaries and commercial grow sites in the state of Oregon. It's only for medical marijuana now, but I don't know if you followed it at all, but probably a year from now it's going to go before the voters. They think the marijuana community thinks they have the strategy now to get recreational marijuana passed by the voters. So dispensaries that go into place and grow sites that go into place now are going to be converted to for recreational use a year from now, which would mean that areas that have those are going to see people coming across borders, Idaho, especially for us here, to these to the dispensaries that are in our communities. The other thing I want to point out before we begin is that nothing that we do here is going to affect the people that have medical marijuana cards right now as far as how they've been getting their marijuana. So there are patients out there that truly use that, and they will still have the access to it, regardless of what we do. The same now as what they will do in the future, no matter which direction we go. You're going to hear tonight from the district attorney, and he has a presentation up first. And we have Heather Cromwell, who's a prevention coordinator. I know the city attorney has some words, and then I know there's several citizens here, or at least one citizen here tonight. And then I have a few more words that I'd like to give to you towards the end to help you at the end. And I just hope that by the end of tonight that we'll have provided you with enough information so that you can give the city staff clear direction on which way you would like this to go on this, what I consider a very important policy decision. So with that, I'd like to introduce District Attorney Matt Shirtcliffe.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As most of you, well, I know all of you. I'm Matt Shirtcliffe. I'd have to give my address and all that stuff that we do for the city council.
Absolutely.
All right, 2710 Main Street, Baker City, Oregon.
No, you don't have to do that.
Oh, okay. I appreciate the chief having me tonight, and we've been talking about this issue for quite a while. And part of my work with Oregon District Attorneys Association over the last couple of years since I've been put on the board is dealing with issues in Salem. So I'm up on this issue, and we've been watching it, and I was glad to see that he brought it up before March 1st when these dispensaries could come into place. Part of going to Salem all the time, that's hard, is the drive, but the good part is I'm up on what's going on. I think I can give you some insight into what's going on and what's going on with the law and some of the options that you have. This is a big deal, and if there's any question about this being a big deal, I think when I'm done, you'll see what I'm talking about. Did y'all get the handout I gave you on the? I put together, as part of ODAA, we have PowerPoints, and I put together a PowerPoint tonight that has kind of a combination of 3 different power plants. We began in 2010, the district attorneys around the state dealing with the problems that we've seen with medical marijuana. So I've taken some of that, but I've also taken a very new PowerPoint that I put together with the help of Rob Bovett, who was a former Lincoln County district attorney, who's now the head of the Association of Oregon Counties, who's been dealing with drug policy in Oregon and around the nation for most of his career. He's been the point man for us in the District Attorney's Association. And I also took some slides from a doctor who has put together some really good information on to present to Washington, Oregon, and Colorado about why we need to slow this down and some of the issues that are going on with marijuana. And so I want to put all this together for you tonight and show you what it's about. If at any point in time anybody wants to see the whole thing, it takes about an hour, and it is a complete rundown of the history of marijuana in Oregon, what's going on in the legislature up until the start of the special session in a few days, and policy reasons, and what's going on with 3460, which is the dispensary bill, and where we're headed.
So they can hear you better.
Oh, okay, I wondered about that. I need to stay at the podium. Okay, let me hold that. Okay, thank you. So, what I plan to discuss tonight is, if I can make this work. Now I need my tech help. To the side? Oh, there you go. Oh, to the side? Okay. First of all, let me just start out by saying I'm not your lawyer, and I know you have one, and I'm going to talk about some legal issues tonight. They're my opinion. They're the opinion I've given Baker County, and I stand behind them, but I also respect that you have a city attorney, and you need to make those decisions and the legal issues that you're going to have. What I plan to discuss is the Medical Marijuana Act in itself. It's impossible for me to get to the dispensary law without talking about the Medical Marijuana Act. And I'm going to pick on it because it deserves it. But I'll say right now, I hope I may offend some people who are within the law, but there are so many people who are not, that in order to do this justice, I have to start from the beginning. I'm going to talk about the progression of marijuana law in multiple states: Oregon, Colorado, Washington, and California. We believe, the district attorneys, the chiefs of police, and the sheriffs, that the Medical Marijuana Act has always been about mainly trying to legalize marijuana and sell marijuana illegally. There are some people who use it lawfully, but I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you tonight, why most of the people involved in this deal are using it illegally. The dispensaries, I'm going to talk about some of the other states, like what's happened in California when they went to dispensaries. 3460, House Bill 3460, which is Oregon's dispensary law, which was passed by the legislature this last session, and the lack of controls involved in that. I'm going to show you that Oregon's dispensary law is extremely weak compared to Colorado's, and if you look at what's happening in Colorado, it's literally a train wreck. Local control and some of the things that we're doing at the county level, and why I think you can pass something, and why it's gray. There is good law out there as to why this federal law preempts the state law, and then a final conclusion just to kind of summarize things. So let me just begin. Oregon began with medical marijuana in 1998. It was sold, the whole idea was that it was sold for people who have chronic disease. An original estimate was there would be 500 to 1,500 patients. You couldn't possess any more than 3 mature plants and 4 immature plants. And the whole point of it shows the ORS there that it should be treated like any other medicine. Now, as of today, the 1,500 patients has kind of gone out the window. We have 60,000 patients in the state of Oregon who qualify under the open-ended severe pain category. And the people who actually have cancer or some other disease that this began around is a pretty small amount. And I'll tell you that if you look at Colorado or Washington, they have similar statistics. I think Washington, or either Colorado or Washington, has close to 80,000 in the severe pain category. Most of them are between the age of 18 and 25 and are very healthy, and a lot of them also have criminal convictions for other drug crimes. The law changed in 1998.
the Oregon legislature, despite the fact that the citizens of Oregon voted down a bill that would, or a citizen initiative that would increase the amount and take us to dispensaries. In 2005, actually, in 2004, there was a ballot measure that Paul Sanford put on the ballot that would increase the amounts and take us to dispensaries, and it was voted down. But in 2005, the legislature still voted the higher increases in. So as of 2005, our Medical Marijuana Act was changed to allow 6 mature plants and up to 18 immature plants, which was a big deal for law enforcement because it allowed people to possess a lot more marijuana. The law allows for patients to have a certain amount of marijuana, growers to grow a certain amount of marijuana, and you can see the amounts there, and then caregivers to have an unlimited number of patients who can have 24 ounces of usable marijuana apiece and up to 6 mature and 18 immature plants. The problem with the law is right here, the caregiver loophole. It allows somebody to not only, under the current Oregon law, I can be a grower, I can be a patient, I can grow for somebody who's sick or claims to be sick, who's a patient, but there's also this caregiver person who's kind of like a middleman. That caregiver can have up to 26 patients, and he can hold marijuana. So he can actually, under this law, legally possess up to 45 pounds of marijuana, 6 pounds as a grower, and 39 pounds as a caregiver. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of marijuana for people. And the problem with that is that has led to all kinds of criminal activity and basically exportation and growing marijuana simply for the purpose of selling it under the guise of medical marijuana. Here's some examples. This is an example of a case out of the Portland area. It's back in 2006, but this stuff is continuing. This person was found with possession of 12 pounds of marijuana, told the police he was a patient and a caregiver. Police seized 9 pounds of excess marijuana. 3 months later, undercover officers purchased marijuana from him. They did a search warrant, found more than 20 plants in excess of what he was allowed. He was also had methamphetamine on his person. This is the kind of stuff we've been seeing now for years under the guise of the Medical Marijuana Act. Here's some other types of crimes that we've seen, big cases around the country. People are exporting large amounts of marijuana from Oregon under the Medical Marijuana Act because they can grow it here legally, and it's harder for us to get search warrants because they're either a caregiver or they're under some sort of a status under the Marijuana Act, Medical Marijuana Act, and then they're exporting it across state lines and making huge amounts of money. And these are examples of cases. The last one, a cardholder had a source of 67 pounds smuggled to Minnesota, $80,000 seized. I mean, these are big, huge amounts, and that's what we've been doing in Oregon with this law. I'm going to try to go quickly because I know there's not a lot of time, but I want to get you through some of this so you understand where this is going. Unintended consequences, children are exposed to medical marijuana. We see this in my cases, my deputies, with the medical marijuana, kids being around it and kids being affected. And this slide kind of lays out sort of the basics of where I'm going to be going. In my PowerPoint that I gave to Rotary yesterday, that is the kind of close to hour-long PowerPoint, it lays out the history of Oregon and what all we've passed and not passed and the exact number of votes and the percentages. And it lays out kind of what's happened in the other states. And this is what I want to just summarize for you, because in order for me to really show you what's going on, I think you need to see Oregon's medical marijuana. As we talked about, the basic law passed in 1998. We were the second state. We increased the amounts, even though in 2004 the voters said no. The legislature said yes and increased the amounts. Then in just this last year, we went to dispensaries in House Bill 3460. And what is currently before the legislature, or may become, I should say before the voters, not the legislatures, is Initiative Petition 21, 22, and 37. In 2012, Mr. Sanford drafted a petition that wasn't very well written, and the voters turned it down, but it was close. It was 47% to 53%. But it was turned down, and it had dispensaries in it and had a full legalization, but it was voted no. So, but in just this last legislative session, 1 year later, we passed the dispensary law anyway. My point in continuing to talk about those numbers is that I'm going to tell you at the end, this whole idea that I keep hearing that we are going to have legalized marijuana in Oregon doesn't have to be accepted. The voters have said no on numerous occasions. It's been close, but they've said no.
And I'm hoping that by doing some of this stuff, we can begin to educate people and maybe stop this train. And I'm going to show you why we need to stop it. IP 21 and 22 initiative petitions aren't well written. They're very broad, and we don't think, DAs don't think it has a chance to pass. IP 37 could. It's got the support of about 3 millionaires who have pushed the Colorado law, who are really behind the legalization of Colorado's marijuana and full-fledged legalization as of January 1st. But they've said they'll stand down if the legislature passes something in a special session. LC 80 was drafted by Senator Przansky. He's a senator from Lane County. It's pretty broad. It doesn't really have a lot to it, and it kind of refers to the voters to say yay or nay, and then we'll fix the details in 2015. We think that doesn't have much of a chance. We don't think the legislature is going to want to play with that. And so we wonder if probably IP 37 may be on the ballot, because we think what I'm getting ready to show you is becoming pretty common knowledge. It's going to become more and more common knowledge around the country. And we think those millionaires that want to push this see what's coming out of Colorado and want this on the ballot now. Because in a couple years from now, once the story gets out about Colorado, we think that voters in Oregon and some of these other states are going to step back and go, whoa, what have we done? And so I'm wanting to educate you on the big picture. It's important to talk about the Medical Marijuana Act and the misuse of it, as well as where we're going with legalization, and compare that to other states to give you the bigger picture. Because the dispensary law is just a little extension of the Medical Marijuana Act. And Chief Lohner's right. The Medical Marijuana Act, nothing's changed. I can still grow marijuana if I'm a card holder or grower. I can have it if I'm a caregiver or a patient. Dispensaries just create a business for which it can continue. And I would argue that dispensaries are very close to legalization anyway. And we need to be careful with that. California was the first state to legalize medical marijuana. We were the second. And then they went to dispensaries in the late 2000s. And it was a train wreck. And within a couple years, they put a moratorium on them. I'm going to show you that here in a second. Colorado, they played around with less than an ounce like we did in the late 90s. And then in 2001, I think they went to medical marijuana. But in the mid-2000s, they passed a dispensary law. A dispensary law that they feel now doesn't have a lot of controls and has problems. And then January 1st of this year, they passed it prior to that, but as of January 1st, just 28 days ago, they fully legalized marijuana. So they've played around with dispensaries for 4 or 5 years. So it's important to look at, I think, what Oregon has done and compare it to other states. Because Oregon, about a year ago, went to dispensaries, and now all of a sudden we're at potentially looking at legalization. Colorado's taken 4 or 5 years with dispensaries, so they can't blame the problems on legalization. It's only been 28 days. It's dispensaries, and I'm going to show you the problems that they have, and that's why I want you to really think about what you're going to do. The California experiment, they went to dispensaries, like I said, in 2005. In July of 2009, they had between 800 and 1,000 dispensaries in LA County. They outnumbered Starbucks almost instantly. They had 100 dispensaries on a 20-mile stretch of Ventura Boulevard. They had a disproportionate percentage of chronically ill 18 to 29-year-olds. And their crime skyrocketed so bad that they had to do away with them within a year or two. 200% increase in robberies near clinics, 52% increase in burglaries, aggravated assaults, those kind of things. Homicides in LA County went up huge. 8 marijuana dispensary-related homicides in LA County since January of 2007. You can read it. I mean, it was really bad. There's a quote by their sheriff, how the program was hijacked by criminals. And like I said, they had to end it very fast. So, House Bill 3460R, dispensary law. What a dispensary basically does, because as the chief mentioned, nothing's changed in the Medical Marijuana Act. You can grow it if you have a card. You can give it to a patient if they have the prescription. But what this does, and what 3460 does, it says you can have a business, you can grow marijuana for patients, but you can grow more than what they're allowed to have. You just have to pay them an unregulated market amount for the excess, any amount of excess.
And then that marijuana that you keep, that unlimited amount of marijuana that you keep in your business, you can only then sell to other new patients who might come along. There is no limit on the amount of marijuana they can hold, and there is no limit on the amount of cash they can hold. And I'm going to get to some of the other problems. And this is something that could happen in downtown Baker, this kind of business, if we don't act. There's a copy of the House bill. So why is this a problem? Why is this an issue? Why am I here? Well, it's against federal law. It's against federal law to dispense, sell, otherwise transfer marijuana, illegal amounts. This is a memo created by the Department of Justice, and it took about a year for the administration to decide what to do. You know, we had these laws being passed in Oregon, Colorado, different places, and the DAs, we kind of call this the 8 points of light. It kind of lists there, and it basically says the U.S. attorneys are saying we won't come in and serve search warrants and bust what is a violation of federal law if certain things happen. There's no distribution of marijuana to minors, preventing certain revenue or sale, distribution, diversion of marijuana to other states, basically all the same things that were happening already under the medical marijuana law, preventing violence, use of firearms, and there's about 8 things there, 5 of which are clearly being violated in Colorado as we speak. But that's the issue. It's a violation of federal law, and the U.S. Attorney's Office wasn't sure what to do. And so they issued this memo. They can at any time come and prosecute. They've chose to stand down, but we wonder, and I'm hearing they may step it up because of some of these problems in Colorado that I'm going to show you. These 8. When it was passed, House Bill 3460 was passed, our dispensary law, the governor sort of didn't, he put out a letter basically signing it with concerns. That's a copy of his letter. He said he would sign it and agree to it if there were extraordinary, vigorous enforcement of the rules. There was an advisory committee, which the chief mentioned, which involves 13 members, and they've met over the past few months. They're done. And one of those members is Rob Bovett, who's a friend of mine, was the former Lincoln County District Attorney, who's now lead counsel for Association of Oregon Counties. Rob's opinion was, and let me also tell you that when 3460 was sailing through the legislature, at the very end of the session, it was pretty much snuck through, we were freaking out, for lack of better expression, as DAs. We didn't want it to pass. We opposed it. The sheriffs opposed it. The chiefs opposed it. But we realized at the end it was probably going to pass. So we at least got a couple things put in there. One, no felons could dispense marijuana. It was going through allowing felons in there. And so that's one thing we got done. Rob got appointed to the Rules Committee, and Rob immediately, being a bright guy, realized we're dealing with minutia rules when the law itself has got all kinds of holes in it, all kinds of problems. And so he has been concerned, and this is an article that was in the Oregonian, and you'll see some other letters and things that he's tried to deal with. So what are the deficiencies in 3460? What's wrong with this dispensary law? What should you be concerned about? There's a lack of staffing and enforcement. The governor called for extraordinarily vigorous enforcement of the rules. The bill calls for 4 full-time employees for the entire state of Oregon. 2 behind the desk in Salem and 2 in the field. Colorado's has 24, and Colorado's law is horrible and isn't working. And I'm going to show you in a second why it's not working. So Colorado's law, which is a failure, has 24 FTEs. Ours has 4. House Bill 3460, dispensers are unlicensed and unregulated. We're dealing with a product, a marijuana product, that has a super high level of THC. It's not the pot that was smoked in the 70s. It's very dangerous, it's very addictive, and it's a super high potent level of THC. Kids show up in the emergency room now when they've eaten it. It affects drivers. They're way more under the influence than they would be under the high that people got years ago. But it can be dispensed out of these dispensaries with no regulation. You go to your local pharmacist to get a pain prescription from your doctor, you're dealing with a college-educated person who's dispensing a narcotic that's controlled by the federal government very carefully. These are just as dangerous of a drug that anybody can just stand behind a business and just give out. If you've got a beer at the local main event tonight, the person behind the counter serving that beer would at least have to take a test with OLCC. Something. Colorado's law at least has that. They regulate their dispenser a little bit, to some degree. Not Oregon. Nothing. Even Colorado's dispensary owners think Oregon's system is flawed. And so that's one of the biggest problems. Some of the other problems, testers are unlicensed, the growers are unlicensed, the product types are unregulated, there's no regulation on the marketing. Labeling's largely unregulated. There's no talk of what can happen at the local level, and there's just all kinds of holes in this law. Rob wrote a letter to the governor, Senator Prozansky. Senator Prozansky's also on the Rules Committee, pointing out these problems and these flaws and trying to get the legislature to look at this because it's a bad law and it's full of problems. Nobody wants to deal with it in 2014. We don't think it'll get dealt with. We think the legislature will push it off. And so we're going to have this problem. Here's why I'm concerned. These are products out of Colorado dispensaries. And if this isn't a problem, I don't know what is. Those are products out of a Colorado dispensary because they're unmarketed, unregulated, their marketing, that are clearly designed for kids. All those products have THC in them. And there's no regulation. So if you want THC-laced Pop-Tarts for your children sold in Baker City, if you don't want that, you might think about what we ought to do. Pop, those are marijuana leaves on the pop with marijuana THC in the soda. Nothing is regulating these products. Increased potency, I talked about that before. Today's marijuana, and I can tell you the guys, the officers on the street, the chief's officers, the guys that work dope, it's serious stuff. It's stuff that can cause you to hallucinate now. And when a kid gets it and digests it, it's not good. And they can sell it and market it towards children right now under current Oregon law. So why does this matter? Those two slides, by the way, came from Dr. Sabay. Dr. Sabay is a founder of the Drug Policy Institute in Florida. He's testified before the Joint Judiciary Committee for our legislature. He is actively trying to get Oregon to look at what they're doing, what they might be getting ready to do. He studied the situation in Colorado and in Washington. I've read, and I had to pare this down. There's a nice slide I could show you that has an article out of the New Yorker. That's a RAND study. It's basically 40 pages. It's not a simple read, but it basically says what Washington's thinking about doing, what our IP 37 would do, which is a taxation bill, won't work. Then unless you eliminate the black market, all you do is create users. You're going to have a heck of a time taxing this stuff because it's an all-cash market. And a guy named Mark Clayton, who's an economist that Washington's legislature hired to come try to do this, went away with his hands in the air and said, you can't do it. Dr. Sabay's pointing out these things, and he's saying to us states, Colorado and Oregon, hey, stop it. Take a look at this. Slow down. And part of what I'm talking to you about tonight is the bigger picture, but it's going to come back to what we can do in Baker City. But if you look at what's happening in Colorado, what Dr. Sabay's saying is the medical dispensary law, the extension, the progression from medical marijuana to the dispensary law is pretty close to legalization. But what's happened in Colorado, and they can't blame, and it's not legalization because they've only gone to full legalization in the last 28 days, has been a mess. And so what he's saying is you got to relook at this. You got to relook at this trend towards legalization. You got to look at medical marijuana because what he's saying and what we've been saying in law enforcement all along was it was primarily a guise to attempt to legalize marijuana. And you need to step back and you need to look at, what we proposed a long time ago as DAs is just either get rid of it because you can take THC pills and other things if that's something you choose to do for your condition. But go back to something like we had with 3 or 4 plants or whatever. Step back and look at this. We have gone way too far. And I think you'll see why and what he's talking about. But it's important to think about Colorado from that perspective. They've had dispensaries now for 4 or 5 years. And here's what's going on with them. Passed medical marijuana in 2001. No dispensaries until mid-2000. Between 2006 and 2012, medical marijuana cardholders rose from 1,000 to over 108,000. The number of dispensaries rose from 0 to 532. Now, they have 24 full-time employees to regulate those. We've got 4, 2 in the field for the entire state. So if we end up with 500 and some dispensaries, do you suppose that some of the people that have unlimited amounts of marijuana and cash in their dispensary will feel pretty comfortable with the fact that there's only 2 people in the state that can inspect them? This is from Denver. This is from Colorado. This is what public officials like you have here are saying about their law. The City of Denver Office of Auditor concluded the City of Denver does not have a basic control framework in place for effective governance of the medical marijuana program. The medical marijuana program records are incomplete, inaccurate, inaccessible, and that many dispensaries are operating without licenses. Well, their 24 FTEs are figuring that out. I don't know how our 4 are going to. Marijuana among Colorado teens is currently 5th highest in the nation, 50% above the national average. And here's the shameful thing about this. Here's what you need to think about. What's happened in Colorado in the last 4 or 5 years since we went to dispensaries. Colorado's above the national average, 50% above the national average. Drug-related referrals for high school students testing positive for marijuana increased by over 150% between 2007 and 2009. These are the dispensary years. Medical marijuana easily diverted to youth. Teens who know somebody with a medical marijuana license are more likely than those who don't report fairly or very easily access to marijuana. 74% of Denver area teens in treatment said they used somebody else's medical marijuana an average of 50 times. We were decreasing the amount of users of marijuana just 8-9 years ago. We were really doing a pretty good job in prosecution and in law enforcement of decreasing the amount, and we weren't sending a lot of people to prison. But since the Medical Marijuana Act, the use is way up. 29% of Denver high school students, this is last year, so this is about a year ago, used marijuana in the last month. Close to 30% of every high school student in Denver reported using marijuana in the last month. If Denver were an American state, and it's not, it's just a city, it would have the highest per capita use of marijuana among high school students in the country. Just one city, because of what they've done. Percent difference between the national and Colorado current teen marijuana use between 2006 and 2011, which is the dispensary years, up to 28.73. Increased traffic fatalities in Colorado. Fatalities involving drivers testing positive for marijuana rose by 112%. Total number of car crashes declined in the 4-year period of dispensaries, while the number of fatal car crashes with drivers testing positive for marijuana rose sharply. So with medical marijuana, with dispensaries, people died more on the highway. So what's the other issue with Colorado? I talked about California, and we talked a little about the robberies and the violence, and I gave you the article. That article's out of Time magazine this month, and it talks about, I don't like it to some degree because it's sort of written as if all of these dispensaries are perfectly legitimate and not doing anything wrong. But if you read it, it still points out that the underlying second problem, besides the increase in use because of dispensaries and this movement towards legalization, is banks can't lend to these businesses. Banks can't let them open up savings accounts and checking accounts because it violates federal law. So it's a full cash market. And if I'm a bad guy and I'm not very smart and I want to rob somebody, the place that has hundreds of thousands of dollars that they know can't go to the bank, that has marijuana in it, is the place to go rob. And that's why Colorado's violent crime is rising, and that's what's in that Time article. It's a huge problem. It was such a problem in California that dispensaries didn't last very long. Now they're kind of going back to it, or trying to go back to it. But the point is that Colorado has a big problem right now because they've gone to this, and there's big increases in crime because it's an all-cash market, and their user rates are way up, and their teen use is way off the charts, and it's because of dispensaries. And I talked a little bit about the Washington sort of test and this attempt to maybe go towards legalization with taxation, and Oregon's looking at that as well. And I can tell you that the problem is, unless you decrease the black market, it doesn't work. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if banks can't lend and it's all cash nobody really wants to keep records, that taxing them may be difficult. And so with all the societal problems that come with this, as I've showed you, what are going to be the gains in taxation in an all-cash market? Not that we should ever make that trade anyway. But my point is, in Colorado and Washington, this is becoming evident that this is a big, big problem and that this isn't working. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see that more and more. It's going to come out more and more. And my hope is that Oregon wakes up and sees this and sees what Dr. Spey is talking about before it's too late. Local control, and I'm going to hit this real quick. I can tell you, and this is the reason we're here, mainly to talk about dispensary law, but it was hard for me to talk about 3460 and the dispensary law without giving you the medical marijuana background and sort of what's happened in the legislature. But I can tell you, and you know, that, and here's my disclaimer again, I know I'm not your lawyer and I need to do this, but I have advised the county. I am county counsel, and I have advised the county. And Rob Bovet, the DA, who I have a lot of respect for because he studied this policy, the governor appointed him to the Rules Committee. You can see from the prior PowerPoints, he knows what he's talking about. He is now the Association of Oregon Counties lead counsel. He believes that municipalities can do some regulation in this area, and that is why the county's done it. Here's some headlines. Can local governments ban medical marijuana outlets? There's the chief of police, I believe, in Medford. They went ahead and did it. A couple of the issues, 3460. What does federal law preempt it? Senate Bill 863, and that's the seed bill, the GMO, genetically modified seed bill, which helps us in our agricultural community. There's some concern that because of that, and marijuana is a genetically altered seed, big time, that might affect that, because that law basically says municipalities can't pass a law that affects the rest of the state, so to speak. We don't think that applies because marijuana falls under the Medical Marijuana Act and isn't an agricultural substance in that way, but that's going to be an interesting call we have to look at. But we don't think, Rob doesn't think that will be included in that sort of issue, and so we think Senate Bill 863 is not going to be a precluder to local regulation. But the big issue is 3460 in terms of because 3460 is a state law, can municipalities regulate this? Can we pass laws? I think yours would be around the business license, and ours is in a zoning law, our federal, saying you can't violate federal law. And so, and there's different ways that municipalities have gone about doing that. And the state, this was just an article that talked about what the state said, and Tualatin went ahead and did it. And let me back up a little bit. The point is that Rob thinks, and I think, and what the law is that, or that what you can stand behind is that federal law preempts state law in this situation. And there's basically a couple cases that are out there, and this is what his opinion is that he's put out to Association of Oregon Counties. And basically, and I'll just kind of keep this simple, and you can talk to the city attorney about it as well, but if a federal law has its main purpose is affected by the state law, the federal law basically trumps, it's preempted. And there's a couple cases that are out there. Emerald Steel is one of them. The Willis case is another one. The Willis case is basically where the sheriffs denied concealed carry permits to people who are medical marijuana holders. And the argument was federal law would preempt that state law that would allow them to have concealed carry permits. The Oregon Supreme Court said, nah, not really. The purpose of the federal law deals more with, in that situation, with guns and possessing guns as it relates to having a medical marijuana card or violating the Medical Marijuana Act. Concealing them is different, and so it doesn't really run afoul of the federal law. But the Emerald case, which I just put up there, is different. The Emerald case was an employment discrimination case in which the employee, I think, was terminated, but said, you can't do this because of the Medical Marijuana Act. And the Emerald Steel, which is a steel company out of Portland, said, well, yeah, we can. You're violating federal law. And the Oregon Supreme Court said, yeah, they can. because possessing marijuana in the workplace, using marijuana in the workplace, does run afoul of the purpose of the federal law. We think a local dispensary putting marijuana out on the street is closer to Emerald Steel than Willis. So Rob Bovet's opinion is different than the opinion of the legislative council. And the legislative council advised the legislature no, that municipalities can't do this, state law trumps. But that opinion mainly dealt with Willis and didn't really cite Emerald Steel as much. So we believe, and Rob believes, and the Association of Oregon Counties has basically put out their opinion that local municipalities can, because federal law trumps state law. And so the state law that would stop the municipalities from doing this would be preempted by federal law. Does that make sense? Okay. I try to keep it as simple as I can, but the bottom line is if there's a federal law out there, I believe you can pass something that says you can't violate it. And I think there's some case law, and obviously Rob Bovet, who's a smart guy who's telling all the counties what his legal opinion is. I think the League of Oregon Cities has said they think you can. So there's good ground to stand on for this. And again, I don't want to, I'm not your attorney, and you need to talk to your attorney about this, but my point is this. There are a lot of things in the law that are gray. And there are a lot of things I do every day I can get sued for. Probably this talk is one of them. But you have to do the right thing sometimes. And I don't want my kids or any of the kids in this community eating THC-laced Pop-Tarts. I don't want that. And I'm not here to say that we'll turn into, Baker City will look like LA County and we'll have 8 homicides. But I promise you, and the chief can tell you, and I know he'll agree with me, that when a business is all cash and all marijuana, and it's in the city limits, it's going to get robbed. And there's going to be problems with that on a regular basis. And so it may not be at the level of California, it may not ever be at the level of Colorado, like Denver, more like Portland. And Portland will start having these problems, trust me. But we will have problems if they're allowed to come in here. And you can do something about it. The biggest issue I would point to you is under the dispensary law is that there's no controls. It's a horrible law. It's poorly written. And it's wide open, and criminals will take advantage of it. Its reason is because they can't deal. If they even wanted to deal lawfully with banks, they can't. And I would argue that a lot of them don't want to anyway. There's no limit to the amount of cash and marijuana they can hold on hand, which just increases crime. The bottom line, though, under these dispensary laws, if you look at what happened in Colorado, is it just increased use. It increased use so much that the teenagers are off the charts in their use. And it's dangerous. It's becoming more and more of a problem. It's a drug that has to be regulated, and we don't want to end up like that. And we just had 2 kids in the middle school with marijuana the other day that the city police had to arrest and we sent to detention. If we have dispensaries and we go down the road, we're going to have more of that. We're going to have more and more problems, and we do not need it. California and Colorado are a great example. So I would urge you to think about passing something and really look at it closely. There is law that will support you. I can't promise you won't be sued. Any lawyer that promises that is not a good lawyer. But I can tell you, my opinion as your district attorney is that the problems associated with the dispensary law and the problems we could have with our children in this community are far greater than the risk of any lawsuit, in my opinion. But again, I'm not your lawyer, I'm your district attorney, and I got to show you this stuff, and I think it's important that I show you this stuff because I believe that this is a huge problem, can become a huge problem. It can become a big problem here in our local community if it's not handled right. And anything you do to deter it, even if they still come in and try to do something, is at least one step forward. The county did it, and I just hope that you'll consider it as well. I apologize if I've taken way more time than I was given. That's my talk. I'll take any questions. And that's pretty much it.
I think you wore them down. There's no questions.
What's that?
You wore them down. There's no
I know.
questions.
I feel bad. I talked so long I didn't even sit there.
Thank you, Mr. Shirtliff, for
Appreciate having me. Thank you.
all the information.
members. My name is Heather Cromwell, and I am the prevention coordinator for Baker County. About 5 months new to the county. I work for New Directions Northwest, so my job is to educate the public and work with the schools and the community regarding preventing drug and alcohol use and tobacco use, as well as problem gambling awareness. So Chief Lohner and I were working on this with respect to me coming at it from educating you folks on the hazards, the health hazards of marijuana, the hazards to the youth, the hazards to the community. Matt covered quite a bit of what I was going to go over, so thank you, Matt. But there's a couple other things I wanted to touch on. And as far as just the health of the overall general user, anything inhaled into the lungs is toxic. It's not healthy for the body. It contributes to poor lung functioning and potential for cancer. And marijuana has been associated with addiction and respiratory illnesses and cognitive impairment. You know, Matt was saying that the potency has almost tripled over the last 20 years. It's not your 60s and 70s pot. It's artificially grown, it's artificially altered. And long-term use by youth has been linked to lower IQs later in life, as much as an 8-point drop. And that overall affects our society as far as our workforce. These kids can't get jobs necessarily. Even if they're holding a medical card later in life, if they're qualified, they're having trouble finding employment. A lot of employers will not hire people even with a medical marijuana card because of the federal law. So it negatively affects overall health and abilities and brain function. And the benefits of marijuana can be found in other forms. They can be found in pill form, dronabinol or nabilone are synthetic versions of the THC chemical, which is the main chemical in cannabis or marijuana that's being used for these pain suppressants. And another issue is bystanders being affected. Infants, children, teens, other family members are all being exposed to the toxins of THC. There were stories, I think, coming out of the Colorado Impact Report, which is pretty significant, of children, youth, babies, anybody walking past the kitchen table where mom or dad or grandpa or uncle has left a marijuana edible, a cookie, a brownie, a candy in these packages that are designed to look like things that are made for kids. And they're winding up in the emergency rooms. Babies, toddlers, anybody that can reach up and grab a cookie. We don't want that for our youth here. It's scary, it's not necessary, and the more dispensaries we have, if we have any, these products are going to be in the homes. It's going to be a significant strain on our healthcare system with the toxins, and eventually it's, you know, with the arrest rates and whatnot, it's going to affect our community, it's going to affect our resources. And as far as our youth goes, we're working on positive community norms right now with prevention. I work closely with the Baker County Prevention Coalition as well. And so we're working on a positive community norms campaign. And it's been shown that, you know, just having pot around and making it so that it's okay teaches kids that it's okay. And it's not. Just because it's recommended by a physician, it's not prescribed, it cannot be prescribed, it's merely a recommendation, doesn't mean that it's any safer than prescription drugs that these kids are getting their hands on. It's still a hazard to their health. It's not okay, and the more we have it around, the social norm is that it is okay, and it's not. Among youth aged 12 to 17, marijuana usage rates are higher in states with medical marijuana laws, 8.6% compared to those without the laws, which is 6.9%. Residents of states with medical marijuana have marijuana abuse and dependence rates that are almost 2 times higher than those without. And the increased use rates lead to increased rates of addiction, Marijuana is being found to be highly addictive these days. Most of the youth in treatment that are under 18 are there because of marijuana use and marijuana dependence. They're also showing up in the emergency departments, and about 1 in 9 people who use marijuana become addicted to it, and when the use starts in adolescence, the rates jump at 1 to 6. So 1 out of 6 youth who start using marijuana as an adolescent could become addicted. And let's see. So as the perception of harm decreases, which is what's going on with the social norm that marijuana is okay because it's supposedly prescribed, which again it's not. It's merely a recommendation. As the as the perception of harm decreases, the use of marijuana increases. So the more the kids think it's okay, the more they're going to use. Again, with the dispensaries and the medical marijuana card holders, they're often either giving or selling their product to our adolescents, and we don't want that. And honestly, if drugs are around, the kids are going to find them. The kids are crafty. They don't even have to be that crafty if they're just around. So I don't know, what else I can say that Matt hasn't already covered or that would make any more impact on the fact that we don't want this in our community. Our kids are precious. We're going to have people from outside of our community coming into our community, which is going to raise a whole host of other problems, not only with the legal aspects, but just for the safety of our kids. Baker County and Baker City are small family communities. We want to keep them friendly. We want to keep businesses coming in, like the Economic Development lead committee person was talking about. But again, one of the concerns is that if we have dispensaries, it's probably going to push these businesses off. They're not going to want to come to a community as small as we are, where we've got 1, maybe 2, maybe more dispensaries. It just doesn't look favorable for Baker City. And honestly, when it does go legal, if it does, these dispensaries are lined up to immediately turn a profit as soon as they can, which is going to create a whole other host of problems. But essentially, my job is to educate against, the harms of the drug, whether it be inhaled, eaten, any of that, and to protect our youth and our community members. And that's pretty much all I have. So I appreciate your time. If you have any questions. No? All right.
I don't believe there are any. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I believe there's a few people here tonight that would like to speak from the audience, so I don't know if you want to hear from them and then from City Attorney Smith. That'd be your call, sir.
That would be fine. Yes, anyone that would like to speak on this.
Mayor, City Council. My name is Stephanie Kinzel, 2209 Grove Street, Apartment 1. I'm a medical marijuana card holder, 2-time cancer survivor. I don't want to see these dispensaries in my community. I've written down 5 points. I'll make it as short as possible. With marijuana still being a federal crime, I believe at this point allowing dispensaries in Baker would create more problems than solutions. Once more, it will take valuable resources away from more pressing societal issues, such as fighting our ever-growing meth problem. Banks are denying money made from dispensaries due to federal law. They're all FDIC, so they're not going to do that. This leaves, as they said, this leaves money and marijuana on dispensary property. I grew up in this atmosphere, and I promise you, there will be crime. Someone will get robbed. Someone may even get killed, because that's the way this business goes. The DOJ has already commandeered OMMP records from the state. Bringing in the dispensaries will certainly bring the DOJ back many, many times. Many people believe that dispensaries will take the power from illegal dealers. Just the opposite, actually. Dealers will undercut the dispensaries. Right now, the dispensary in Ontario charges $12 per gram. A street dealer charges $10. You get my point? Marijuana is becoming an American commodity. The stock market's already married to the high-risk investment. They're already talking about, doing this on the stock market, people's investment. If indeed the council decides to allow dispensaries, I ask for my community that they be mandated to be outside of the city limits. I'd prefer they not be here at all. Also, if you decide this is something you might want, I ask for a community public vote on this issue. Because, in my opinion, even as a card holder, most people don't want it here. In fact, I promise you right now, if you deny this, I'll come tear my card up in front of you. That was all I was going to say, but they were talking about kids and getting into marijuana. I don't know if you've heard of RSO oil. It's called Rick Simpson oil. And, these growers, they make it, they condense it down, they add things to it. The other night, my friend's grandson got into hers. He took a knife after her, and the cops had to come and arrest him. He spent time in the jail here and then was transported to the state hospital. You taxpayers pay for that. His family pays for that. That young man's paying for that, all because he was able to get a hold of that. I grew up with a cocaine dealer, a cocaine addict. I was rolling my mother's joints when I was 7. In 1993, I was diagnosed with a borderline IQ of 72. As you can tell, that no longer holds true. But I stand here as a card holder, and I beg you, please do not allow this to happen in this community. We have bigger fish to fry, like the meth problem. And I thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I don't believe there are any. Thank you very much. Okay. Mark.
Good evening, Council. I was asked to provide an opinion to the Council and to the City on whether the City should take steps to prevent medical marijuana facilities from locating in Baker City. There is a serious debate happening in the country on prohibition and at the state level. That is not what my comments are about. As a council, you have an obligation to do your best to make decisions that will serve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens in this city. That's what they elect you to do. And you are lawgivers. I am an advice giver, and you've heard from other advice givers tonight, but you are the lawgivers. There are other lawgivers in this state. The Supreme Court, the circuit court judge here in this county, the legislature, the governor. Those are other folks that give laws. I'm going to provide you with some of the recent information and read some of the laws that have been passed briefly so that you can be aware. The history of the medical marijuana law was described to you. There were no medical marijuana facilities, and I use facilities because that's the word that's used in the legislature decided to call it a medical marijuana facility, not a dispensary. There were no facilities like that in Oregon until House Bill 3460 was passed in 2013. The Oregon Health Authority was instructed to develop rules about where facilities could be located, how they should be regulated. And those draft rules are available online, and you can read them if you want. The first facilities, the first time that I believe they're allowed to apply is in early March. There will be the first time that folks are allowed to apply for that license. House Bill 3460 it authorized the transfer of marijuana from a card holder under the existing system to the facility, and then from the facility back to the card holder. The Legislative Council provided an opinion. Your county district attorney referenced that. This opinion is available online, and I encourage you to read it. You can just look it up. If you go to the Oregonian's website, you can read a number of news articles about this subject and the efforts of other cities, and there's links to Legislative Council's opinion. The legislature's objectives in passing House Bill 3460, which is the dispensary bill, or the facility bill, were to, one, ensure that medical marijuana card holders who are unable or unwilling to grow their own medical marijuana have access to a reliable source of medical marijuana. Two, ensure that medical marijuana obtained by card holders is safe and of known quantity or known quality. Three, discourage card holder support for black market marijuana sources. Four, supply law enforcement with information that would allow law enforcement to better distinguish lawful grow sites and suppliers from unlawful grow sites and suppliers. And five, ensure a consistent and uniform approach throughout the state to law enforcement regarding medical marijuana facilities. So that was the law that was given to us by the legislature, and that was their stated goals in passing the medical marijuana facility law. Legislative Council issued an opinion. Now, it's important to understand the context of this. Sometimes the legislature tells us, these are the rules and that's it, and this will be the law in the state of Oregon. Sometimes the legislature passes a law and it says, these are the rules, but if a city wants to do this particular thing, that's fine too. And I can give you two examples that apply here in Baker City, just to make it clear. The state issues public contracting rules, model contracting rules, and many cities adopt those model contracting rules. Baker does not. Baker has its own rules, and the legislature says you can either follow the model rules or you can make your own rules. There is a state dog ordinance that says these are the rules that apply. Counties and cities can do this and this and this. And it says right in the dog chapter, this does not prevent a city from doing more than this. A city can do more than this if they want to. Now, in the case of this new bill regarding the facilities, the legislature didn't say anything about what cities can or can't do. It just said this is the law about it, about this subject. Legislative Council, so the lawyers for the legislature, this is not a lawgiver, this is an advice giver. Legislative Council says, we conclude that House Bill 3460 preempts most municipal laws specifically targeting medical marijuana facilities. A municipality may not act contrary to state law merely because the municipality believes that the action will better carry out the purposes and objectives of federal law. That is that's what Legislative Council said. And as your advice giver, I'm here to tell you that I agree with Legislative Council's opinion. There was some discussion of the Willits case. The quote from the Willits case that the Legislative Council relies on, this was says, this is from the Oregon Supreme Court, it is well established that the federal government lacks constitutional authority to commandeer, the policymaking or enforcement apparatus of the states by requiring them to enact or enforce a federal regulatory program. That's what the Willis case that was discussed earlier says. Now, I believe that the senator in this, is this in Senator Hansel's district? Senator Bill Hansel, your senator here, state senator? No? Okay. Cliff Benson is your state representative, or Cliff Bentz. Senator Hansel is the senator in Union and Umatilla counties. Senator Hansel has proposed a bill, Senate Bill 531. You can read about this and you can read the text of the bill. Currently, there are no votes, no meetings, and no amendments scheduled for this bill, but it is supposed to come up in the February session of the Oregon legislature. Senate Bill 1531, 2014. It was sponsored by Senator Hansel. This bill, if it was enacted, would say, notwithstanding the new facility laws, the governing body of a city or county may adopt ordinances that regulate or restrict the operation of medical marijuana facilities registered under the statute and that are located in the area subject to the jurisdiction of the city or county. Okay. So Senator Hansel and Senator Monroe, Hansel's a Republican, Monroe's a Democrat, they've proposed a law to be heard by the legislature in another month that will, if the legislature passes this, the city can very obviously then ban medical marijuana facilities if they choose to do so, if you all choose to do so. That is what the legislature is doing right now. If the legislature does not pass that facility, or this new bill, you can still choose to take some action on this subject if you so choose. You can also choose to take no action and just to allow the state law to stand. This issue about whether cities and counties can regulate the medical marijuana facilities, if it's not resolved by a law like this new law that the Senate's going to consider, it's likely to be resolved by either the courts or the legislature in the next year or two, because the cities that have banned medical marijuana facilities through whatever means are likely to be sued by folks that feel like the legislature made the rules so that they could have medical marijuana facilities in their city. So there's likely to be lawsuits on that subject. My opinion is that the courts will say the legislature occupied the field. The legislature decided to stand in the place of cities and counties with respect to medical marijuana facilities. Therefore, cities and counties can't ban them. That's given the current law that has been passed, which is House Bill 3460. That's my opinion about how the courts will resolve it, and that's the opinion of Legislative Council. Now, if the city decides, you the lawgivers decide that you want to take action on this issue, it is important that you carefully consider what action you take. In your council packets was a copy of a Gresham ordinance that dealt with business licenses, and I want to discuss that with you. The current business license business license ordinance for Baker City is Chapter 110, and there are two types of businesses that must have business licenses in Baker City. That is carnivals and circus exhibitions. No one else has to have a business license in Baker City right now. The approach of Gresham, and I think other cities, was to add a section to their existing business license ordinance that says, we do not give a license to a business that violates local, state, or federal law. And you should understand why they wanted to approach it that way, because approaching it that way has the appearance of We just passed the law because this rule because we don't want businesses that violate federal law. It has the appearance of something other than what was really meant, which was to ban medical marijuana facilities in the jurisdiction. And that's part of the debate that will happen up in the courts as well. They didn't actually target the medical marijuana facilities. See, they just banned businesses that violate federal laws. I would strongly discourage an approach where the city decides to add medical marijuana facilities to the list of the 2 other businesses that require licenses, and in the same breath state that we won't allow businesses that violate federal law, in the same breath ban those businesses, because I strongly feel that that is a dishonest way to approach your responsibilities as lawgivers. And it's a disingenuous way. If your belief is that to protect the health, safety, and welfare of these citizens, that you should ban medical marijuana facilities, then ban medical marijuana facilities. That's my advice. You are the lawgivers. The other thing to do is to create a real business license ordinance where every business in Baker City is required to obtain a license, and there is a fee and there is some requirement. Baker City doesn't have that currently. The city could do that, and if the city did that, the city could include language like that found in the Gresham Ordinance, where the city says we won't give a business license to a business that violates federal law, and if you don't have a business license and you try to do a business, it's unlawful, and we can shut you down, and we can get the circuit court judge or the municipal judge, the county justice court judge, to issue an injunction. The sheriff or the city policeman can prevent you from doing that business. That is another way to approach it. A final way to approach it, if you chose to take action on this, is to just pass a temporary ban on having a medical marijuana facility, or a permanent one, whatever you chose to do. If you do that, it is fairly likely that the city would be joined in some sort of, there's likely to be a lawsuit against the cities that have banned these facilities, where the folks are going to say, their argument will be, the legislature allowed us to do this, and the legislature did not allow you guys to ban this, you cities and you counties to ban this. And that will, the city might end up being a part of such a suit, and we'd have to wait and see how it would resolve. And there would be some costs associated with that. So I want to be clear, this is not a pro-marijuana talk. This is me giving you advice about the law. And I want to remind you that you are the lawgivers in this situation. If you are not ready to make a decision right now, I would encourage you to look at, before you make a decision, to look at the legislative opinion that came out. It is written well, it's easy to follow. Look at the laws and read up on both the opinions and on the things that the House of Representatives have come out with on this, and it's very easy to access that. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, Councilor Dora has a question.
Yes, Brent. Number one, I'm opposed to having these facilities, and so obviously I'm prejudiced, and while I appreciate your advice, I heard some things I don't really like. So if the council, you mentioned the licenses, and Matt, that the licenses applications go out March 1st of March. Does that mean on March 1st they get a license, March 2nd they open up a store? What I'm trying to do is try and set a time frame on how much time we have to act here.
So my understanding is that they can apply for a license, and it's during the first 5 days of March. The Oregon Health Authority has a big explanation up. You can just read it right on their website. It says when it happens. I don't know how long after they apply they can actually be operating a facility. I did not find that out. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
But it will say on there. I'm sure that it does.
So the point is, what if we want to do anything but sit on our hands and just let this go into effect, we need to do it soon.
And my suggestion on that issue is that you've got this Senate bill that is going to be coming up when they're in session in February. And I have no idea whether it's going to pass or not. But if it passes, obviously you can just pass an ordinance that bans medical marijuana facilities, if that's how you vote. Now, if it doesn't pass, then there may be a lawsuit over that if the city tries to prohibit it. If the city wants to approach this by actually creating a business license ordinance that applies to all businesses, I think that is a project that probably can't be done in a week. Well, it probably can be, but it shouldn't be done in a week, because it should be done correctly and it should be well thought out, and all the business owners in this city are going to have comments on that, I'm sure.
Councilor Mosier.
Is the legislature envisioning any, that you know of, any bills that would clarify, specifically saying cities and counties cannot prohibit dispensaries? I thought I might be confusing an Oregon, a potential Oregon bill with a potential Washington state bill, because I believe I've heard that at least coming out of the state of Washington. So it sounds like we've got the flip side that's going to be proposed, that we're going to be given at least the option, the legislature is going to be given the option to allow cities and counties to disallow dispensaries. But do you know of anything?
I don't know. I assume that if there was an introduced bill that would do that I would have found out about it as I looked.
Right.
But this is all very fluid. This 1531 is very recent. It would sure be nice if the legislature would do that for us, because otherwise the courts are going to say one way or another in a year or two. I mean, that is practically speaking what will happen.
Mm-hmm. And if we were to pass something that disallows, just blatantly says Baker City does not allow dispensaries within its city limits, and then there was a suit, is that likely to be defended, if we were joined in a suit, would that likely be defended by League of Oregon Cities, or not League of Oregon Cities, by our CIS?
I do not believe that CIS would cover that as a suit that would be defended by CIS. I think it is very likely, if the city was sued over something like that, League of Oregon Cities or Association of Oregon Counties are going to have some sort of legal fund, and they're going to have some sort of team that represents that viewpoint. And so I certainly don't know what the cost to the city would be. And when you have one of those joint defense issues, you still want to have people in your city keeping an eye on it to make sure it's consistent with what you want. But I don't think it would be a really significant cost. I don't mean it all to scare, to raise the specter of an expensive lawsuit on this. There will likely be a lawsuit. There will be some expense, but I'm not suggesting that is a reason to do one thing or another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm suggesting that in giving you advice, I agree with legislative counsel's opinion.
Okay, and you believe that if we were to pass something, and if it were to be challenged, then it's likely that, I'm just paraphrasing what I think your opinion is, it's likely that the courts would say that state law is going to preempt our local law.
Yes, my opinion is that the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals opinion that issues is going to read very, very similar to legislative counsel's opinion. But that is just my opinion, and I would
Right.
encourage you all to read legislative council's.
And it sounds like there's a pretty good split between legal minds right now over how that decision would come down. That there's
I
at
don't
least
know.
a
We've
legal
only,
argument.
I don't. We've heard from two lawyers tonight, and I know that there is a split of opinion in the state on this issue. League of Oregon Cities, Sean O'Day, who I think is their lawyer, has. You see, part of my problem is that I searched for some written opinions by League of Oregon Cities or Association of Oregon Counties on, what do they think this opinion, this Court of Appeals or Supreme Court opinion will look like. I didn't find that, and I reviewed, like I said, legislative council's opinion, and I found it very persuasive, and I think that that's how this will turn out. Your very first question was the most important one, which is it sure would be nice if the legislature would tell us one way or another, and I think that they probably will. And if the tack that the city wants to take is to not deal with this business license ordinance issue, but just either ban it or not ban it, I think that the city could do that in late February once we find out what the legislature does when the session starts.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Mosier. Councilor Downing.
I'm kind of like Councilor Dora. I don't want these in our city. We have enough of an issue with marijuana and other drugs that we don't need this other headache. However, I also don't want to punish our current business owners and make them jump through another hoop of getting a business license, whether there's a fee associated or not. So I'm kind of in the favor of either we ban it or we don't. And if we need to wait till February, I'd like to not wait till February. But if we need to wait till February so we don't get in trouble later down the road, then I would say we go that route.
Thank you, Councilor Downing. Councilor Johnson.
Well, February comes at the end of this week, but when you read that bill that's going to be heard, you prefaced that by saying something there hadn't been any meetings or hearings or anything like that. Are there customary those things before a bill is presented?
The answer is I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Right now, I believe that they are not in session. So just because there's no vote scheduled, no meeting scheduled, no amendments on it, doesn't really mean anything.
Okay. Doesn't.
And I really, we may know once they're back in session, I think fairly early on, there's going to be some article in the Oregonian, or you can call your senator, your representative, and say, what's happening on this? And they will be able to say, they're going to prevent it from coming to a vote, or they're going to say, we're going to vote on it, on this date. I think that they will know fairly early on in the session.
So it can't get stalled in committee and not come out?
No, I think it could be.
Okay.
I just think that we will know whether that's going to happen to it
By?
fairly early on in the session.
Okay. So we could delay our ban until the middle of February and still be, because I'm with the other councilors, I've heard that there are already people looking for real estate in which to open the dispensaries.
To answer your question, I think that we will have more information on what the legislature intends to do by the middle of February.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Perhaps we can do a little more research and find out if this is coming up, and also if the council could pass a resolution to support the 1531 being passed. Chief Lohner.
Could I have about 5 more minutes, Mr. Mayor? Just a couple minutes here. I just want to point out a couple things that Councilor Doris said. Yes, the time to act is now. These are going to start cropping up in March. And anything that starts maneuvering its way through the court system in the state of Oregon, to say it's going to happen in a year is pretty optimistic. It's going to take years to work this through the court system. And I don't want dispensaries in my town, in our town, and I don't think any of you do in that meantime. We've heard a lot of opinions tonight about about marijuana and whether or not we should allow dispensaries, or whether we even can. And with all due respect, the city attorney is concerned about lawsuits. Sometimes doing the right things means taking a risk. And you know, multiple cities and counties in Oregon, including many on the west side, where it's considerably more liberal than our area, have already addressed this issue using the same tactic that I'm proposing, which is senior staff reports. This is our community. My hope is that we together take a stand against these marijuana dispensaries and make it very clear to everyone that we don't want them here. Yes, the state may eventually tell cities and counties that we can't prohibit them under any circumstances, but until then, we'll at least do what we can. As of 6 days ago, Sean O'Day, the lead counsel for the League of Oregon Cities, says he believes cities can do this. And you know, you will know as well as I do that when we pass a law, whether it's to form a new business license, which I thought I communicated with the city attorney that it would take a whole new business license. To put that through, you can choose to do a fee or not. But whether we do that or do an outright ban, it's going to have to come in an ordinance form, and it's going to take a couple weeks, 3 weeks. Well, it's going to take a couple weeks just in between meetings, so it's going to take some time to get that passed. And meanwhile, if these dispensaries start the application process, I don't know how long it's going to take either. It could take some time, but I'll guarantee you that, in my opinion, we need to move forward now, and I would really hope that council would consider this and give city staff some direction. Thank you.
Councilor Mosier.
Well, I also think that we need to act soon or immediately. I understand the idea that maybe we would want, some folks might want to wait a few weeks or wait into early February, mid-February, late February, but I would rather start acting now. I also believe that the business license ordinance, we need to look at it because it's true. We have two, as was pointed out, we have two types of businesses that require business licenses, and it's a little nonsensical at this point because we have done away with the transient merchant tax, and we've done away with the EID failed, so now we don't have anything that requires a business license except for circuses and carnivals. So I think that does need to be addressed, but I also think to do it right will take longer than what we have in order to prevent dispensaries from coming on board in March. I would like to see us make a statement or have a resolution that supports the bill that was mentioned by the city attorney. I'd also like to see us have an ordinance that disallows dispensaries, and then in due time, take time to look at business licenses and do that properly, and potentially add in there a prohibition against licensing businesses that violate federal law. So that's sort of a three-part
Is that a motion?
I could make it a motion. I might not have to have it read back to me, but
I'll second it.
Could a business license be created that would grandfather in all existing businesses?
Brent says, yeah, that'll take some time to, that'll just take some time to formulate that. But yeah, I'm sure that's possible.
Then we wouldn't have to, start from square one with everybody that's already in business. Councilor Dora.
Well, I'm not sure where the problem is with the business license, because I think there's, golly, how many communities that have business license? We have, I'm going to say there's probably 20 different business license ordinances that we could draw from in a work session and either pick one that worked or cherry pick the best parts out of several and have something put together. On a time frame, the way I see it is if we, in the next couple of weeks, we could put something together, we could vote on it at the next meeting, first and second reading, and then pass it on the second meeting in February, and we have it. So my point, and I don't know if the business license is necessarily the absolute best way to go, but my point is, if we had a couple work sessions, and then at the next meeting we decide on what we come up with. Now, Mike, would that work in your mind?
We can put it together. I really believe, like Brent said, there's going to be a lot of comments on, from people in the community about business license, whether there's a fee or not. And then, we have to figure out who's going to issue the license and, how. I just don't know. But yeah, we could definitely put something together.
I don't see anything there that's insurmountable, and of course, over the years, there's been talk of business license just to have information on businesses, how many employees in this and that, with no charge. So that's an option.
Thank you, Councilor Dory. Councilor Mosier.
My only concern with that, I mean, if we can get the business license worked out within the next few weeks, I think that would be a fine option. My concern is that comments from the business community may slow the process down, and it sounds like we don't have a lot of extra meetings or a lot of extra weeks in order to put something in place that will do what we're talking about tonight, which is to put something in place to prevent dispensaries from being in our community. So, maybe we could have it at least in our back pocket that we could come up with a resolution or come up with an ordinance that would prevent dispensaries.
Well,
so if
I think that's a great idea. We'll write two different ordinances, and because the one just banning dispensaries would be easy.
Right.
And Wynn's got most of the work done on business license ordinance. So, yeah, we'll just bring both of them back to the council.
Okay. Is there any more comments from council? Well, thank all of you very much for all the input and all the information. We'll try to do our best.
Could we have a break? Mayor?
Let's see.
Can we have
10-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
You're not leaving?
I thought we fixed that damn
Are you
thing,
leaving?
didn't we?
Mike, we should address, while Heidi is here, the mayor with the YMCA and get that.
You sure move items on the agenda.
Would you, let's see, can I,
No, we're talking about
Heidi,
changing around on the agenda.
let's, we'll move it up right after this break and put you right on. Oh.
Well, I'm hearing it, but when we have the other mic on, they're talking like that, so I can't turn that one down.
So can I test that one? We can figure it out.
Yeah, you gonna sing a song?
Volare.
Ken Cron. Pat Caldwell.
Damn, you two are being awful quiet.
Test.
Mm-hmm.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Test 4. Yeah. Am I modulating?
Oh, on the tankless
What?
water heaters?
Oh, you're still testing? Well, how many choices do you have? Oh, okay.
That's
How
a
about,
good system.
did you find it?
I mean, the tankless system.
Good Lord. And you say it's working, but you just can't. No. Isn't there a light that comes on the other one that shows? Right, yep, that's it. Okay.
I was telling you, we have in the back room at our place, we have 200-gallon, 199,000 BTU.
Mike's on there.
No, mine's not on.
Or maybe Roger was, or maybe Barbara's is.
You don't think the meeting's over, do you?
We've only just begun here.
Okay, number 10.
Okay.
Number 10 is public.
Okay.
I couldn't figure it out, and the problem was when they had the other one on and they're my checks in the mail came.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be $20. 3 seconds of work. I'll call you tomorrow morning too. It won't be anything hard. It'll be basically just normal recap of this and that, how the city's two ordinances, because that's going to be difficult.
Your eyes were closed. I know. That's a good time to take it.
I'll turn you back on. I'll turn you back on.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and resume the meeting. We'll go ahead and resume the meeting. And we're going to move the Samo Swim, item 12. We're going to move it forward right now and discuss the water system at the Samo Swim. Michelle Owens.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. When I came before you in December and I let you know about the status of the equipment at Samo Swim Center, and I indicated that we had a timeline in which to complete some repairs. In one case, we're making a repair, and in the other case, we're making a replacement. We put out a request for proposals the beginning of January, and we received 2 responses to that request for proposals for a domestic hot water system, and we received those on Friday afternoon. I know that doesn't give us a lot of time to evaluate, but we are under a time crunch as far as the state goes. They've granted us an extension until February 28th to make the repairs, and the two proposals that we received, both were able to meet that fairly close to the deadline. I apologize for that. I've got quite a cough, and I do apologize. As my staff report indicates, we have had the domestic hot water as a concern at Samuel Swim Center for a number of years. The Budget Board and City Council have allocated $25,000 as a grant match, and we were looking for opportunities for grants. As it turns out, time has caught up with us, and we now need to act and replace the domestic hot water system. The estimates I'd had over time were in the $30,000 to $50,000 range, depending on what type of system replacement we went with. We did the request for proposals, and the two proposals that came back are similar, but not exactly the same. One proposal from Valley Metal and Heating, which is the low-cost alternative, has 2 tankless units and a storage tank, and will serve the on-demand hot water needs of Samuel Swim. The other proposal that came in had 4 Renai units, the on-demand units in series. Again, the low-cost alternative was from Valley Metal and Heating for $22,440. You were supplied with just a brief bid tab. And just to give you a little more background information, we delivered the RFP to 7 different plumbers, 6 of them here in Baker City and 1 down in Grand. And again, we received the 2 responses. Keith Magnuson, our facilities supervisor, met with 3 different firms at the pool to kind of go over this situation. So those that bid knew exactly what they were, they'd all visited the site and were familiar with the situation. So again, the low-cost alternative is Valley Metal and Heating. It includes 2 tankless units and a storage tank. And I wanted to let you know that Steve Hardgrath with Valley Metal is here and can talk about the system in some detail if you would like, because I know that we had limited time to review the specifications.
Thank you. Are there any specifications on how much water each one of these systems produces?
There are, and both Renai, which is what Action Plumbing proposed, and Navian, which is what Valley Metal proposed, you supply them with the number of facilities that you're going to use, for instance, the number of showers, the number of restrooms, things like that they must supply water for, and they tell you what size system and how many units you will need. And so the request for proposals indicated the number of facilities, and like I said, each of the firms visited the site, verified that, gave that information to the firms of Renai and Navian, and they recommended the appropriate units.
Okay, so you can there's 7 showers between the men's and the women's, there's 7, 8?
There's 11.
11.
And then we also had 9 lavatories.
Okay, so you could
So
these systems are set up so that you could turn all 11 on?
Right.
And they would run continuously?
That is the way that it is designed, so that they could all run simultaneously. Okay, I don't know that that happens all of the time, but there are certainly times that there are a large number of folks that get out of the pool at the same time or get into the pool at the same time and take showers, and so you have to assume that all of those gang showers that are in both the men's and women's restrooms are in use at the same time, and so it was designed for that.
Okay.
And then, of course, with the multiple tanks, when there's only a small need for hot water, 1 tank will come on. When there's more, 2 will come on. That would be how it would work.
So the one consists of 2 tankless
and then a
water heaters, and the other one consists of 4 water heaters.
4 tankless units.
Oh, they're both, they're all
They're both,
tankless.
one is all tankless. That is from Action Plumbing.
Okay.
And that was at, sorry, I don't have my bid tab right out in front of me, just over $36,000. I'm sorry, I just don't have the bid tab right here. 36,033. I did speak with Dave of Action Plumbing. He had some question about the requirement for prevailing wage. Steve from Valley Metal called and verified the need for that ahead of time, and it's not over $50,000, so it doesn't fall into that category. In talking with Dave this evening, he indicated that if he was not using prevailing wage, his number would have been lower. It would have been $33,313. The council can consider that. Even though he put his number of $36,033, he would not have to pay the prevailing wage, and so therefore his total cost would be less. But there's still a difference between the $33,000 and the $22,000 of $11,000. Now, something to be considered is, of course, currently we have a large storage tank, hundreds of gallons. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how large it is. Sorry about that. But a large storage tank, which has limited insulation left and leaks, which is why we need to replace it. Keeping a lot of hot water hot costs energy. That is what has been a nice feature in the tankless units. You only heat the water that you need to use when you need to use it. Valley Metals is kind of a hybrid. It has a tank, but it's a much smaller tank, so it was a storage tank. And so it's kind of a hybrid of what we had. It's a storage tank, but yet we still have the on-demand ability. To me, it seemed like a good transition. I've not experienced an on-demand system. I don't have one in my home. So to me, kind of comparing some things, it seemed like a good system as well as cost-effective. There are some dollars in the equipment maintenance line item that we could use towards this purchase. And again, we would look for savings in other line items in the San Luis Swim Fund and be able to fully fund this project this year.
Councilor Dora.
Yeah, you brought up energy. What? Pardon me. You brought up the energy.
So, do they tell you, what to expect on energy costs annually or per gallon or?
There are some general specs too, on the websites expecting energy savings. Right now our boiler is an 80% efficient unit. The Navian is a 97 point something percent.
But between the two, do you have any feel for the difference in cost for what we're doing down there? Annual cost or?
Between the two and having a
on
storage
energy,
unit.
yeah.
I don't have an exact number of what that would be. I would imagine that having only tankless units and not having a storage tank is going to be a little bit more of a savings in the heating costs, because of course you're not keeping a tank of water hot. However, we're moving from a very large storage tank to a much smaller storage tank in the low-cost proposal. And so while there's still some, that gives us a backup in order to meet those very quickly changing needs. Like I said, oftentimes there's no one in the shower, and then a class will let out or a swim lesson, and then everyone's in the shower. And I think, Heidi could kind of inform us how that really happens quite often. Sometimes there's nobody there, and then the next minute there's a number of people there. So it needs to fluctuate like that. And I think the storage tank would give us a little bit more flexibility there, being able to meet those bigger demands.
Thank you, Councilor Dora. Councilor Coles.
Back in your staff report, you've got the recent annual state inspection of the boiler and domestic hot water tank resulted in a red tag being placed on the domestic hot water tank. This red tag means the inspector deemed the tank. I thought it was yellow. Why is this saying red?
Yeah, and it is, and I apologize about the color, but basically what it means is you have to fix it within 30 days. You have to fix it.
Well, I would think
If you
red
can't
tag would
fix it-
shut her down.
Right, and so he would come back in 30 days. If we didn't fix it, he would put a red tag on it and shut it off. So
to me, it's a pending red tag because we can't fix, and I'm sorry to not be more clear on that, but we can't fix this yellow tag. The yellow tag that is on the boiler, which heats the building, requires a flange to be replaced. That's something we can fix, and we'll get that fixed. We'll do it on the same day that we install the new hot water system, so as to reduce the time that the pool is down. But the domestic hot water tank, we cannot fix it, and therefore, we're not going to wait until they actually tag it and shut it off, because that would require the pool to shut down. We're going to fix it before he comes back, but it's a pending red tag.
Well, I see on this Navin, right here, Navin recalls tankless water heaters due to risk of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Why don't we have Mr. Hardrath come up to answer technical questions like that? Could you, Steve?
You have a question? I have a drawing here for you. First off, when you ask for a bid, you ask for it correctly. It doesn't count on how many people use the shower. I know that's what we think, but it doesn't. What it counts on is how many shower heads you have and how many sinks you have to how much you have to create the heat to make sure that they carry what is considered between 105 and 115 degrees. So when you are looking at it, as long as I can keep continuous hot water coming, you can run as many people through there as you want to, individually, groups, anything you want. It's about what the shower heads need. And so you need to meet that need. And then if you want to add shower heads, obviously you increase the need. But at this point, this was what was presented in the ask for quote was, can you get something to meet this need? Why did I choose a system without 4 tanks? Is because a lot of times people don't like the hot and cold moments that come when you turn on a system and you wait for the water to go through and the sensors to come on and arrive to a temperature. And what happens is you won't stop that unless you, because the on-demand's nature is the water passes through. It has to sense it before it comes on. So you got a guy in there with a shower and they went off for a moment. Cold water passes through and they come back on. So you're going to have some momentary spurts of cold water. What the tank does is 2 things. The tank provides you a storage, but it provides you an opportunity to have hot water constantly coming for use to you in the shower. And then your Navions are just going to keep that maintained. What you presently have is a boiler that has 2 stages. By the way, I can tell you it's lower than what you thought as far as percentage. No, it's not 80%, but anyway, you have a boiler with 2 stages. One of them is 500,000, the other is 800,000. The 800,000 is what you're currently using to keep your pool warm, and the 500,000 is what you're doing to keep your domestic hot water running. So when a unit runs approximately 60% efficient, that means you're going to get about 300 BTUs, 300,000 BTUs of heat that you're using to warm your water in a storage tank, really large one. And so that heat has to keep passing through there until enough heat transfers, then it goes into your domestic hot water. You currently have a pump on that system. That pump circulates the water through the line so that when they go in and turn the shower on, they feel hot water. They need to get that from somewhere. And that they would get from the tank. Then your tank supplies hot water back. Why I'm using 2 hot water heaters is they're $199,000. That keeps you from joining the boiler company and having to pay the large fees to have a boiler. But they also, the $199,000 makes about 400,000 BTUs of heat, or 380 actual 88,000 BTUs of heat that you're really going to put in there, which is currently about 80,000 more BTUs than you currently have. Plus, we reduce the storage so that you only need as much as your lines are going to demand in order for you to get hot water to them and keep those lines currently hot. So I tried to develop a system that was going to give you the maximum efficiency, which I feel can be as much as a third of what you're paying to run to keep those things heated now. A lot of gas is going up the flue. And of course, those tubes are getting older and they're not repairable. This system kind of draws you to an independence. One of the questions I saw in here was whether or not you can add to it. Well, the way I'm setting the system up, I'm trying to set it up so that you guys have the opportunity, should you want to add more, you just attach another unit to it, and it feeds it into that system to allow you to increase the capacity should you need to, and not cost you a lot of money down the road for additions or changes. But then that means something's going to have to happen. You're going to make a bigger pool, or you're going to double the building. What would motivate you to increase the shower load at this time if you actually have 30% more usable heat to your showers than what you had before? And if it worked before, it should work for you now. I do want to help in the process of making a system that is easy for you to care and maintain. You brought up an article on Navian, but you need to also check those articles against whether or not they were installed correctly, any unit that isn't stuck in correctly. The units I'm bidding are rated for commercial application use. They're meant to go into your corrosive environment where you have an opportunity for that chlorine to affect the impact on the units. It won't stop it from eating metal, but the sooner that gets cleaned up or the easier that becomes, the less opportunity it has to heat up products that are inside the pool.
The article I got here is from the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission. It says, that's what I said, Navon recalls tankless water heaters due to the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Do you have a date on that article?
Does it have a model of the water heater?
Yeah, the model number.
December 27, 2011.
I have not had any recall or any problems. I currently have one in my home, one in my rental, and several of other ones out there that are not having any issues with. The monoxide detector can be present if that becomes a concern, but it may be an issue on a particular product. I'm happy to look into that. I haven't had any record or issues.
Mayor, to finish up, I'd like to hear from the CEO of the Y2. She has children that she's got to pick up, and she'd like to, I think, say something.
Yes.
So, hello, Heidi Dalton, CEO of the YMCA. So, I just today seen the RFP responses and had a list of questions, some of which I reviewed with Mike today. We were able to talk with Mr. Hardrath, and then I also spoke with Dave Billings from Action Plumbing and got some of my questions answered as well. I guess, to me, the RFP was very vague. You know, it's written in a way that doesn't really specify what kind of system is necessary or required, and it doesn't really allow for apples-to-apples comparison of the two systems. In talking, in our understanding of each of those systems, both may well serve the city in terms of demand. My concern is primarily from a performance standpoint. There are times when we have 120 children getting out of the pool who all need to shower in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So if they're truly looking at the 11 shower heads and trying to meet peak demand and both serve that would meet my needs. As a taxpayer, though, I would look a little broader and ask the questions, what are the costs to operate each of those systems? Having a tank system is more costly than having tankless systems. That's why we looked at on-demand to begin with. Or one of the reasons, I should say, that we looked at on-demand as a partner. So I guess to me, I still have a lot of unanswered questions in this. This ultimately isn't my call. I'm trying to influence it only from the standpoint that I want a system that performs, that meets the demands for the Y,
that meets the demands for our members and our citizens that we're trying to serve. I'm not convinced that you can look at the two bids that came back and compare them accurately. There's not enough information that's been provided honestly from either company that gives me the confidence to say that they're both going to meet our needs. Mr. Billings is not here to address the technical questions. So my recommendation in reviewing this, both from an energy efficiency and cost to operate standpoint, as well as just clearly understanding what the demand is. I appreciate Mr. Hardrath's perspective that there's only 11 shower heads, and if we can meet the demand for all, we must have met demand. I think it's important for us to understand how many people are recycling through the pool. I can give you visits by the hour for the last 2 years by day. So we can look at and analyze how many people were rotating through the pool and help the city to understand that. But again, my concern is primarily from a performance standpoint as the CEO. But as a taxpayer, I think it's also important when you look at investing in your assets to understand what the cost is to operate those assets and look at the most efficient solution from that standpoint. I don't have enough information to answer those questions. My recommendation, although I know that this is important, and I asked you the last time I was here to make this a priority, my recommendation would be to gather the necessary information to make a good, solid decision for the long term and wait until you have the right information to do that.
Councillor Downing.
So my wife and I looked at doing a tankless system in our home at one point, and have not done it. We found a couple things which I think Valley Metal's system addresses. One of the issues was the shot of cold water you get until that system realizes that it's asking for hot water, and it does take a while. The second, and by having the tank in there, it alleviates that problem. The other issue that we found in talking to others that have a tankless system in their home, the city water is so cold in the wintertime, a lot of times those tankless systems don't get it hot fast enough as it goes through the tanks or through the tubes. So your hot water is not really hot. It's more like lukewarm if you're lucky. Where with having the storage tank would alleviate that issue. It would give the opportunity to keep that water a little hot and move it a little slower so the water does get hot. Those were the things we found when looking at putting the system in our own home. We still have a tank. We did not go with tankless. There was also some other cost issues there. So when I saw this with the storage tank, that answered my question. Even having the 4 systems lined up, you're still going to get them cold spurts of cold water in a shower, and that's not going to be fun. So I'm glad to see that he did the hybrid system.
And that may be the best solution. Honestly, I'm not the expert. I have a tankless system in my home. It completely meets our demand for our household. But I do think the tank provides those advantages. I think but if you're also paying to heat that tank of water continuously. And my understanding, if I understand correctly, is that when that tank draws down, both of those units will fire up to heat the tank back up. It's not in the Renai system, if there's a demand for hot water, the first tank will come on. If there's additional demand, the second tank will come on, and so forth. So the cost effectiveness of operating that is going to be much lower or higher efficiency, lower cost, because they're only going to heat as they need to, and you just chain on another one as demand increases. So there's certainly pros and cons, and I'm not convinced one way or another, honestly. I don't feel like I have enough information if I were the consumer purchasing this system to make a good decision. And I guess that's what it comes down to. I think the specs could have been better defined, so the comparison could have been made really a bit more intelligently to make sure. What I don't want to have happen is that we go forward, we as a city, being a taxpayer, go forward with investing in the pool and have that solution not meet our needs. Then we've just
throwing good money after bad. And I don't know, honestly, if this is the best system or not. I guess the other question I do have, technically speaking, is that my understanding is the system, as you're proposing, would be installed in the boiler room. Is that allowed? Yes. Okay. So we can reinstall the domestic hot water system in that room, we just can't install another boiler?
There are code requirements that have to do with ventilation.
Okay, so there's no requirements, I mean, that's just a question. There's no requirements for that for domestic hot water.
Councillor Coles.
The two, hopefully I get both of them. You said earlier you just saw the spec or the RFP return today, and I noticed when it came out that your name wasn't on it for one thing, but there was news media that was on it, and I can't figure out why the chief executive officer of the YMCA was not included in the Friday email. This makes no sense. The ones that run the pool, and I'm talking to the council, it makes no sense to end up having it turn out that way. They should have been included and had that. The email was there just as plain as could be. The other side of it is I'm in total agreement with Heidi. I think we need more information, comparison, to be able to truly compare, to do the wise thing for the taxpayer, since they're the ones now, since we bypassed the grant structure, and that's out the window, that are going to have to foot the bill on it.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Moser.
I'm in agreement with Councillor Coles that the CEO of the YMCA should have been included. And some of these questions, I'm glad, are being asked and answered. It would have been great had they been asked and answered before tonight. I'm also glad to have this additional information and the drawing. I'd like to see the same information from the other responder. There are considerable differences. I mean, why are we looking? I mean, one of my questions is why is a 2-tank system, or 2 tankless plus a small tank system, how is that equivalent to the output of a 4 tankless system, a 4-unit tankless system? So and it may be simple answers. It may clearly work out, but I agree with Ms. Dalton. I don't think we have the information available to be able to adequately make a decision. And it may be that the low-cost alternative is the best way to go, or it also may be that an additional $11,000 is going to save us $25,000 in the future. But we don't have that in front of us. And we don't have the other provider, the other responder here to give us that information. And I think a lot of the questions that Ms. Dalton still has are absolutely justified and should be given to her so she can make an adequate assessment and help us to know. I think Heidi's a great resource for us because Ms. Dalton is running the pool. She's the one that's using. She's the one who has access to this building every single day, and when something isn't working or when the doors close, she's the one who has parents on the phone, seniors on the phone, people wondering why and when it's going to be open again and how are the repairs going to be made and when is someone going to come in to do it. She's going to have to answer all those questions. So she needs to have the information on how the system works, whether or not it's going to work, and her opinion on how it's going to work for that facility is really important. And the relationship between the city and the Y, I'll try not to go on too long because I know that it's 9:30, but the relationship between the city and the Y is essential. The YMCA is a huge part of our Parks and Rec department as an extension of our Parks and Rec. as a city, we don't have to provide a number of the resources that the Y does for us. And so that relationship, I know we're talking about the pool, we're not talking about all of this, the sports and the other facilities and the other activities that the Y facilitates, but that relationship is so important. We don't, the city, the taxpayers don't have to provide a lot of the services that other cities do have to provide because we have a YMCA. And we cannot afford to let that relationship break down. We've got to be able to keep the communication open between staff and those who are in charge of running the Y. It's a small town. We have to rely on community partners over and over and over again in order to let the city get done what the citizens have the resources that we want. And it's disheartening to see circumstances where that relationship can and has broken down in certain ways. So.
I agree, and I think I could help you with your comments about the RFP. We got a bid packet from Mr. Hardrath that contained all the information. We got a faxed face sheet from the company in LeGrand. That's it.
Yeah, well, my understanding from Mr. Billings is that he helped draft the requirements for the RFP that were then not used to publish.
I don't know. I'm just.
He also provided a detailed bid prior when we asked in January of 13, which you attached.
You ask about why we're not comparing apples to apples is because we got a bid packet from Mr. Hardrath. We got a faxed face sheet that we had to ask for several times from the other company. We supplemented that face sheet with information that we had from the other company about a year ago. And so those are the other things that were included with the face sheet.
So, Mr. Key, with all due respect, if it wasn't sufficient, why is it being presented to the council as an option? We should have.
Well, I've explained to the council it's not staff's job to go out and babysit these people that bid on jobs. We hand delivered 6 or 7 of these. We toured the 3 that were interested in going through and taking a look, and we got what we got.
The storage tank, what size is that?
It's 100 gallons. Listen,
okay.
You got water, got to get to the kids so that when they turn it on, it's hot. You're not going to do that with the 4 tanks without putting on a pump. So if you're pumping that line, when you look at the tank, it's minimal so that you maintain that constant water temperature. It's insulated. It's going to be protected. It's not going to waste fuel. It doesn't have a vent on it to let the heat out. It stays in the container until it's go. But you will always have, you have now, a circulation line that goes out and comes back with hot water. That line volume and the tank are part of what it takes. As long as you circulate out and that line is exposed, you're going to lose heat out of the pipe. That has nothing to do with what's going on back there. What we're doing is applying the hot water to you at the maximum efficiency that we can so that you have usable hot water available. Efficiency-wise, you can say that it probably sounds more efficient that 4 of these babies are in line, but folks, it's BTUs. Where are you putting them? What are you doing with them? And when you take those BTUs and you can keep them and contain them and use them where you want, that's your maximum efficiency. Not that the unit just burns at 97%. It's what you do with the hot water after you got it. And the question will be, would it be a complaint if I put in a system and every time they turn it on, they got cold water in the beginning? Would the city get a call for that, or would Heidi get a call for that? Yeah, that's why the original system was set up with a tank and a pump on it in order for you to always get the convenience of the hot water. Is that efficient? It has some efficiency issues, but it also has the fact that it gets you the hot water and it does cost you to do it. You're running a pump, and you're keeping the line hot.
It's by far the best way to produce a consistent product all the time. Now, this produces the two waterless tanks produce, or tankless heaters produce 4 gallons per minute each, so 8 gallons per minute.
Right.
I'm hitting just a brain freeze on what a shower head is.
That's because all I have to do is heat the hot water that feeds the tank.
Right.
I don't have to, the city water pressure is what's going to push the water to the showers.
But what does a shower head use?
They can use 3 or 4 gallons a minute. Some vary depending on them. I don't know what these exact ones are. I had them calculated, based on 11 shower heads, and had it engineered by the Canadian people to make sure we had a match for tank relationship with the Canadian units to be able to provide constant, again, 105 to 115 degree water. In fact, I believe it'll give you even more. See, the Navians run at 180 degrees. They go up to that high. So those temperatures are going to vary until they can keep and maintain your water temperature so that you're always sensitive. If you look on that tank, there's a sensor in that tank to make sure you're maintaining it. So those units are coming on and off. They're not going to run unless that tank temperature starts to drop. They're going to
You have
want to
11
maintain.
shower heads running that many gallons per minute out of that tank.
Then it's going to come on.
Yeah, your 2 units are going to come on, but they're not going to be supplying water as fast as it's going out of the tank.
It'll continue to put hot water on.
But the amount, yeah. I mean,
It,
I guess it depends on the temperature. But.
Yeah, if you've got 2 water heaters that are producing 8 gallons per minute, and your shower heads are using 3 to 4 gallons per minute, you're using 44 gallons of water.
But I'm running the water temperature at 180 degrees into the tank. It increases. There is a communication wire, if you look between there, it increases the temperature of the water to make both of them reach the maximum so that we're carrying the 400,000 BTUs to the water. The system you have now heated your water. This has got more heat. It actually has more heat to use.
So what you're saying is we're only putting out, what was it, 8 or 9 gallons a minute off the units, but you're adding how much cold water you need to drop it from 180 down to, say, 105, 105 to 115. So what are you adding? 2, 3, 16, 2-3 times of cold water? They're doing the math. See, you're using 4 gallons a minute on 11 shower heads. That's 44 gallons. You got 8 gallons coming out of the hot water heater. That's a lot of cold water.
But I'm doing heat transfer into the tank. I'm causing that tank to maintain and keep the water hot. It's just replacing water out of the tank. You still got that 100 gallons of capacity to still use, and the lines, whatever it is, to your shower and back.
But at 44 gallons a minute, it's going to take 2.5 minutes to drain your tank.
This won't drain the tank.
Navon's a big company. They've obviously used this system in other places where there's a lot of demand.
Yes. This is kind of where things are going. People are looking for more efficiency. They're looking for more of how to get that water across that lower BTU value of, what it costs to put a BTU in it and maintain it. Yes.
Is there a system like this in a situation like this that we can call and say, how do you like it?
I can try to find that for you.
Okay, that would be very helpful.
That was my suggestion on actually both. Just making sure, I'm just trying to get us to the best decision. Yes, and so where are these being used? Is this sufficient in this environment? Commercial environment, right?
And if you guys want to propose it, that you want 4 water heaters in line, tell me. I mean, I'll do what you want. We were asked to create a system to give the 11 shower heads and 9 sinks, and that's what we tried to come up with the system. And understanding that you only have a limited amount of money to spend.
The, Councilor Dory. No. The system needs to work. The dollar amount is another issue. I mean, if you know, I'm looking at, you know, 44 gallons a minute being drained from this system, and a figure on here that says it produces 8 gallons of hot water a minute. And it doesn't add up.
I can get you an analysis on this, some that might give you more clarity.
Yes, that would help.
I can see that's necessary.
Councilor Coles.
I'll go back and say it's why we need to put this on hold till we actually get some good quality, equal information to compare them for the taxpayers' benefit, not just rush because crisis.
And if we could get some more information together, you know, we could meet sometime next week.
Okay, all right. I guess, so the direction, I guess the question I would ask the council, is it fair to go back to the other company and say, hey, you didn't provide us with enough information, you know, prior to this bid closing, and now I mean, is it fair to Mr. Hardrath, who did it right, to go back to this other company and say, here's Mr. Hardrath's proposal, we need some more information from you?
What we basically need, I think, is an example where the system works.
Okay.
Would that be correct? Because, I mean,
We can certainly provide that.
the equipment's good, the workmanship is good. We just want to make sure it works.
Yeah, I think what's important to note, just because there's been the word bid thrown around here numerous times, this was a request for proposals because I am not a domestic hot water expert. I asked the experts to propose what would work best for our system. I got two a little bit different ones. So it isn't apples to apples, and I know that that's difficult. However, I'm asking.
In your request for a system that works, do you have a number of gallons per minute?
That they had to meet the shower and lavatory requirements. So yes, we told them what was there currently.
Was it in gallons per minute?
No, it was in number of shower heads and number of sinks.
I think it would be very difficult to say how many gallons per minute, because some people take a quick shower.
You got to provide that constantly. If you went down there at 7 o'clock this morning, turned those shower heads on at 7 o'clock tonight.
Well, most of those shower heads don't work properly anyway, so.
Well, we do a fair amount of maintenance on them, I'll give you that. That is a requirement. But in any case, that's why I want to be careful that I didn't ask them to bid the exact same thing. I asked the experts to propose what they thought would best serve the city. And we had two options, so that's what was brought before.
And that's what a request for a proposal,
Exactly.
or proposal is.
I just think in order to evaluate those two options against each other, you need to have some basic measurements that tell you how to compare the two. And that would be efficiency of the system, cost to operate, how many gallons of output you're going to get, what can you do at peak efficiency, you know, what's the capacity to expand. Our utilization is growing annually, so what, you know, how do we expand it, so forth. What is the expected life of the units? I mean, I've got 20 questions I could ask.
Councilor Mosier.
I probably don't need to, it goes without saying that I would request that Ms. Dalton be kept apprised of any additional information, and that we also consider her opinion about what's going to work for that facility.
Well, we'll have a goal of seeing if we can get this information by tomorrow night when we meet again.
Okay. Councilor Coles.
We have a city engineer. Did he ever go down there and look it over? Has he had any input on it?
He did not have input on this. This was for, I asked the professionals that do this type of work to give a proposal.
Okay. Councilor Johnson.
I just like to request that you make a list of, the information that you require so that they're not working blind.
You need something to go from it.
So
I guess
we'll-
I'm still unclear.
I'm
We'll
clear.
start getting-
I'm clear.
Great.
Do I hear a motion to table?
Thanks for coming, Steve.
I move we table this until we get more information.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Johnson, seconded by Councilor Coulson, table this issue till hopefully, possibly just later this week. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion of Public Arts Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On January 14th, a meeting was held with a group of citizens who have an interest in public art within Baker City. Councilor Dora represented the council at the meeting. The group had a broad discussion on what they would like to see accomplished by a Public Arts Commission. The group referred to a couple other ordinances just for examples. The group worked through a draft ordinance suggesting changes and attempting to get group consensus on the issues. At the conclusion of the meeting, the group agreed to continue to work on the draft ordinance through email. Since that time, other interested parties have joined in on the email discussion and have made a lot of changes on what was initially the draft ordinance, and have brought to you a proposed draft. It seems through the email discussion that the only issue that hasn't been completely resolved is the review process for placement of public art in the downtown historic district. So I have provided the language of both the proposed ordinance, which creates a Public Arts Commission, which, by the way, we already have a lot of applicants for that commission, and the Historic District Design Review Committee, so the council could take a look at, give staff some direction on maybe just what role the Baker City Historic District Review Committee should have in the placement of public art in the historic district. So I'm not asking for approval of an ordinance, I'm just asking for some direction. There are also folks here who were involved in that committee that may want to speak.
Is there anyone here that would like to talk about the Arts Commission? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Ann Mahaffey, 3245 Elm Street. I was on the team that we had, the meeting we had in January, and I also sit on design review. So in my mind, there's no conflict at all. There's an ordinance for the city that oversees the demise and or anything else that happens, activities that happen in the historic district, and that I would assume would definitely oversee any activity that the Public Arts Commission might have in the historic district, not in terms of the art itself, but in terms of construction and or anything to do with buildings, because that's what the ordinance is. There is an ordinance with the city that says if there's anything done to any buildings or altering or, I don't know, changing any building at all, it has to go before design review. So I don't think that anyone on design review would be interested in reviewing the art per se, whether it's appropriate in the district, but simply if the art is attached or adhered to a building or something else is happening. So I don't see a conflict, and I don't see that it's really even necessary to have the language in the Public Arts Commission ordinance.
For the review?
Mm-hmm. Because anybody who does any construction whatsoever has to go before design review.
So I guess one of the questions we had internally, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, the first sentence in design review says, no person, firm, or corporation shall construct any new or reconstruct, alter, remodel, paint, sandblast, repair, or demolish any existing structures. So our only question was, are structures buildings? Or would structures be a fountain or a statue or...
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
But I know with my design review hat on, my only concern is if a mural were proposed,
on a building.
And if a mural is painted on brick that has not been painted upon before, then you wouldn't want a mural on that. If the building's been painted, then it's not a big deal to have it painted over again. But if it definitely is exposed brick, you wouldn't want to paint it, and you wouldn't want a mural there. So you would want someone having some authority to say you can't do this. You can't destroy historic buildings in the district. But that's my only concern, not that design review would serve as a function of approving art one way or another. That's for the sole purpose. That is the sole purpose of the commission, the Public Art Commission.
So I might just point out to you, Mayor and Council, the section, I highlighted the section in the proposed ordinance, and it says, work with the City of Baker City to assure all public art is placed or installed in accordance with current city or state standards or laws. In order to preserve the character of the Baker City Historic District, the Commission must obtain approval from the Historic District Design Review Committee if a piece of art is proposed to be placed within the district. And I think I heard Ann say that she doesn't believe that's necessary.
Any questions from council? Okay. We've discussed that one.
Any direction from council on that?
So what's the next step here?
I'll bring an ordinance back to you at the next meeting, or the first reading of the ordinance at the next meeting.
There's some people in the audience that want to be considered.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak about the Art Commission?
No?
Oh, I would like to see it happen, but I don't have anything to say about it right at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mosier.
I just mentioned or remind council that I think we all saw a message, heard from another member of the Public Arts Commission, Ms. Duman, had written to us saying that she is in support of this additional language. What that means, I just thought I would remind council that we have heard from another member of the committee that is in favor of having the additional review by the Historic District Design Review Committee.
So, yes.
I really want to applaud the city. Mike was there, and I feel that this is an extraordinary thing happening. And Ginger at Crossroads, Ginger Savage, called the meeting, but prior to that, Mike and Ginger went over to Boise and looked at public art. And this has been something that I've been interested in for a long time. A lot of us have, and it just kind of happened. And it's quite extraordinary and wonderful, and I'm just thrilled beyond belief that we're partners with the city. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ann. Thank you.
I can, we don't necessarily need to make a decision tonight. I can bring you an ordinance at the next meeting, leave this language in, and you can think about it and decide at the next meeting whether you think it's necessary that design review public art in downtown.
Okay. That sounds very good. Thank you. Okay, authorization to proceed with safe drinking water loan.
I'll make this brief. Back on October 8th, we talked about funding options for the UV treatment facility, and at that time, it was clearly favorable to go with the Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. The main benefit of that fund is the first $250,000 that you borrow, we would be eligible to have forgiven, which means it's the same basically as it functions as a grant towards our project. It doesn't look like after the state reviewed our numbers, our rates are too low to be considered disadvantaged. They haven't made the final determination, but that's what it looks like, which would mean it would be for whatever we loan or whatever we take out in loan, we would pay a 3.7% interest rate. We would like to just proceed with the application, which would be for $2 million Safe Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund. And then when council reviews capital plans in March, you can decide how much you actually need to take out of this fund versus you want to defer other projects. You know, that decision can be made in March. But the $2 million will be available that we can utilize as we need it. And I'm just looking for authorization to put in the application.
Councilor Dora.
Yeah, I have a question about the need for the loan. Going back a few years when we were in a lawsuit with the Forest Service over our right to replace the mountain water line, we made a decision to get permission from the Water Resources Board or whatever it was to drag that out over 10, 15 years and basically not spend $1 million a year that we were spending on that water line. And we haven't worked on it for about 3 years, and in theory we should have accumulated around $3 million. So what happened to that?
We certainly still have a reserve in the water fund. That's not the decision that we need to make tonight. That'll be when you look at capital plans in March. The benefit to getting this loan, the first $250,000 that you draw out of it is basically forgiven. It's free money towards our project. I don't see it's just a win-win situation. So the first $250,000 is forgiven by the state. We could draw out $250,000 if that's what you choose to do and not repay a penny. But we still need to put in an application in order to do that. The decision of how much will be pulled out of this, based exactly on what you're saying, Councilor Dora, is for a discussion in March when we look at capital plans and how we want to proceed forward with our other capital projects we have in the water fund. Is that?
That answers it, and that sounds fine. So okay. In theory, we could pull out $250,000, no charge, no interest, no payback, and then utilize all the funds that we've saved up from not working on a mountain line.
Absolutely.
Okay,
and
thank you.
The state has confirmed that.
Excellent idea. Councilor Mosier.
So you say we're not currently disadvantaged in quotes as a term of art from the standpoint of the application?
And that is because our rates are too low.
Okay.
We have to put the rates above what is affordable for our citizens in order for them to give us a better rate on that. So.
Okay. So if we apply now, if at some point in the future the city had to raise rates or decided to raise rates, could we reapply?
Well.
Or are we close enough to even consider that to be?
It isn't a reapplication isn't necessary. Basically what the state will do is at the time we actually, and it's getting late and I can't remember the timing, I think it's when the project is complete, right? They make the final determination of whether you're disadvantaged. So we have like a year to decide what we want to do with our rates, and any portion that we are considered disadvantaged, The bottom number is you will get the $250,000 of forgivable principal. It may be that they consider you disadvantaged enough that they give you $300,000. There's a range in there, and the state calculates that based on a couple different things. One thing that is kind of going against us is we have set aside reserves, and we have been able to accumulate money for this other project that we're working on. And that actually, in this case, makes us look less disadvantaged.
Okay.
So it is one consideration in their calculation as well. But we do have time still to raise rates and maybe qualify at some point to get more of the disadvantaged status at this point in time. So right now, we're just doing the application. Then when the project's complete, they'll make the final determination.
All right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mosier. And do I hear a motion from Councilor Johnson?
Yes, I move that we direct staff to make the application.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Johnson, seconded by Councilor Mosier to put in for this loan. All those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, we have some appoint volunteers to several city boards and commissions.
We did that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we didn't do that. They haven't picked them up yet. Did you do yours?
Can I ask a favor of you to start with the PWAC, because that's the only one that we have more applications than we have vacancies, and then you can decide if you just want to appoint the other volunteers.
You want a copy of mine?
Let's see. So on the PWAC committee, you've got how many openings?
How many openings on the PWAC?
Did you?
You need to vote for three. There's 3, 4, 5, there's 7 applications, and you need to vote for 3.
And that's the one that, and where do we have all those names?
We still have those extras.
No, you haven't. There we go. Okay. Public Works. I only see 4 names. Was there another sheet? I didn't get that. Myra. That's right, those were on an email we received. Sorry about that.
Can we talk to the golf people first, since before we do this? They've been waiting a long time.
It's okay, we had a couple special meetings for them. We had a couple special meetings for them.
Yeah, but take care of me.
So the count is Wickert, 3 votes, Schumacher, 1 vote, Pope, 1 vote, McDaniel, 3 votes, Morgan, 6 votes, Groshen, 2 votes, and Bishop, 2 votes, which means Ms. Morgan got the most votes with 6, and Wickert and McDaniel would be the other 2.
Okay.
Mayor, I move that we appoint Leah Hoover and Gail Dooman again to the Budget Board.
I'll second. Okay. It's been moved to appoint by Cole, seconded by Councilor Downings. All those in favor? Okay, that takes care of them? All righty. let's go ahead and talk about some golf course equipment. We'll just move up one.
We're just going to let them go ahead and so they can go.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Council, I've done a staff report on proposal to buy equipment from 7 Iron, who was the past concessionaire up at the golf course. The city proposes buying this equipment, which my talks with Tiedemann Consulting are required to run the golf course, and I have attached a list. The one thing on the list that exceeded $5,000, I went online and got 3 informal bids, and $7,000 is a low bid on similar Massey Ferguson model 1160s. Everything else is fairly, I did also look at Workman, Toro Workmans, and those are priced low also. And so I've got this list. I've indicated to you that 7 Iron had a sale, I believe it was last weekend, in order to hold some of this equipment. Tiedemann Consulting put money down, and 7 Iron has said that they'll hold the equipment until a council decision. We do have funding available from the Equipment and Vehicle Fund capital outlay. And so we do have, even though it was not budgeted and this was not anticipated, we do have the $50,000 available to purchase the equipment. We did, and I don't think we made it available to the council. We had an email today from a citizen who did not, what did he say? He said he did not recommend that the city purchase this equipment because it's been used hard. Most of this equipment, all of this equipment, Mr. Tiedemann and Jeff, his superintendent, have looked at. You know, the majority of it is things that are used in the shop, irrigation equipment that he's going to need, shelving and things like that that are just going to be necessary for him to run the golf course. And if he weren't buying it used, the city would have to go out and find something new. And in our estimates, this equipment, if we did have to go out and buy it new, especially the landscaping equipment, we're getting it for about half price.
Probably
Fourth of the price. Of new.
If I could address the council, I'm learning a lot about equipment these days, but some of the golf course equipment is only used 2 or 3 times a year, and some of it's used every day. The everyday stuff that 7 Iron had is worn out, but the stuff that's used only 2, 3, 4 times a year, it was well maintained, and we didn't think there was any reason to not purchase it, because we knew the condition, and we got comparables, and we think we paid fair price. The day-to-day stuff is the new stuff that is going to be purchased and leased back to the corporation. So there's really, I'm sure that there are citizens saying that the stuff is worn out and used hard. It's not worn out. It's only used 2 or 3 times a year, and it's going to be just fine. But it's in our best interest to spend the least amount of money, for the city to spend the least amount of money, because it's going to reflect on our lease payments. So the smaller the investment that the city makes, the less we pay annually in lease payments. So we felt strongly enough that I put my own money down to hold this equipment through the weekend, because we were sure that if we didn't secure this equipment, and it's only maybe a third of what he had, maybe not even that much, that we'd have to go out in the open market and spend more money and buy equipment that we didn't know anything about. So that's why we did that.
Okay. Councilor Coles.
Well, you're fine with it then?
All the equipment's in fantastic shape. We've looked over all of it, and I've used some of it since I've been here.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think Billy took a really good care of the equipment, it's pretty obvious.
Okay.
Jeff?
I move that we authorize the purchase of this equipment and get it done so Bill can start rolling.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Coles and seconded by Councilor Johnson to purchase the used equipment for the golf course. All those in favor? Motion passes. Okay, ordinance number 3326, prohibiting smoking in the city parks. Could we hear that by title only?
That'll make my report short. There's been no changes since the second reading. And you requested me to read it by title only?
Yes, please.
Ordinance number 3326, an ordinance providing for the healthy environment of city parks and pathways, banning the act of smoking and smoking products therein.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the third and final reading of ordinance 3326 by title.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Mosier and seconded by a couple of people. Councilor Johnson. All those in favor of the smoking ban in the park? Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Did we wear this thing down? I think we did.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the city manager?
A reminder that there's a city-county meeting tomorrow at the courthouse at 5:30. You should have received an agenda. You mentioned doing a resolution on Senate Bill 1531. Would it be, would you like to do it sooner and just send the letter to Representative Vince and Senator Ferrioli saying the council supports Senate Bill 1531, or do you find it necessary to do a resolution? Doesn't matter to me.
I think a letter in support would be fine.
Consensus?
Does any of the city staff have anything that wish to add?
I just want to mention that we will continue to advertise for the budget board and the design review board and try to get some more applications in there. We also have a one-year term left on the planning commission that I'm advertising for as we speak. So if there's any citizens out there that are interested in doing some of these things, historic design review, budget board, and planning commission, we're looking for volunteers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do any members of the council have anything they'd like to add? Okay, we hereby adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm really happy about your news. That's exciting.